Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. A sunny day in Salt Lake City. A little bit nippy out there, but that's what happens in the wintertime. Very happy to be back with you after a Friday off. Scott Mitchell filled in for me. Big thanks to him for doing so. I was on the other side of the planet calling some fights in the PFL. It was a great night of fights. Hopefully, I guess for all of you, if you bothered tuning in on Max or streaming on Max, which I think is a more accurate thing. You don't really tune in anymore. Now you stream on Max and on Netflix and places like that. It would have been a morning time fight for you, but it was a great morning of fights in the United States, a great night of fights in Dubai, and it was a blast to be over there. Always good to come home. That is the greatest benefit of having an opportunity to travel internationally, is you get to feel grateful to come home to the United States, to the good old US of A, several times a year. Give yourself that opportunity whenever you can. Like, it's great to go see different places. It really is a wonderful thing. But there's just nothing better than coming back to American soil. Even when the weather was like 78 and sunny in Dubai, and then I came back and I landed at like midnight last night, and I go to the parking lot, and for some reason, my car, which is typically quite reliable, decided it was not going to start. Like the battery had somehow drained. I don't know if I'd left like the overhead light on or something silly, but then I had to wait for an hour for someone to come jump me. So it's frigid, but you know what? It's America, man. Feels good to come home. Especially feels good to come home when you're in transit and you land at an American airport after a 17-hour flight. Dubai to Houston is 17 hours.
That's wild.
It's a long flight. But then you land, and as you're walking through the terminal, what do you see? You see people gathering around televisions watching NFL playoff football. And the first game, when I landed in Houston, the first game was about halfway gone. And not a particularly competitive or interesting game compared to some of the other stuff we've been treated to in the college football playoff and the NFL playoffs. Certainly not the game that the AFC Championship ended up being. But that's a thing, man. There's the camaraderie you feel with your fellow American, whether they know about it or not, when you walk into an airport and everybody is subconsciously gathered around all the cantinas and the bars and the little snack shops that have televisions, watching NFL playoff football. That feels very, very, very American, and I was glad to come back to it. 877-353-0700. You can always weigh in. Tell me what you're thinking on the Dish Pros text line at Real OC Sports on Twitter. I have provided you with a couple of poll questions that I would like for you to weigh in on. A couple I put out last night, and I have since retweeted. But a lot of the conversation last night, late, and then, of course, this morning, is about the way that the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes specifically are beneficiaries of biased officiating, or they are protected by the officials, or that there is some grand conspiracy to get the Chiefs into the Super Bowl again. And I don't buy it. That's a really good team with a really good coach and the best quarterback active in football right now. I'm not necessarily on the full conspiracy wagon with like, hey, they really want Patrick Mahomes to three-peat. It is a time-honored thing in professional sports in particular that you call the game differently based on who the players are. Superstar players get treated differently than everyone else does. And that's not just an NFL thing. It's probably most prevalent, actually, in the NBA. And maybe the reason folks have such a problem with it in the NFL, or a problem with the perceived special treatment that Patrick Mahomes gets in the NFL, is because it doesn't really happen a lot to everyone. It doesn't happen for a lot of the other great quarterbacks in the league. There's nobody protecting Lamar Jackson and his sensibilities. Josh Allen doesn't seem to get any extra love. I mean, the poor Bills, trying to get a first down and extend a drive, can't get a decent spot. So that's part of the conversation. In baseball, the strike zone is never consistent for the superstar hitters versus the guys that nobody loves. So how do you feel about refs calling games differently for superstar players? 93% of the people weighing in say they hate it. I mean, you have to go back a long way to where anyone in the state of Utah was special enough or perceived to be special enough in their respective league to get the benefit of the doubt, to get the special treatment. I don't think it applies nearly as much in college football or in college sports, so this is more of a pro conversation. And I don't know that Karl Malone ever got special treatment or John Stockton ever got special treatment. I don't know if Darren Williams was ever a guy that got more whistles than, Chris Paul because of how good he was. I just don't think that you've ever really seen a Utah team benefit from this phenomenon. And in fact, going up against, the Michael Jordan Bulls, you probably were hurt by it more than you were helped by it. Going up against the Kobe Bryant Lakers and the Shaquille O'Neal Lakers, you were hurt by it more than you were helped by it. So I think it's an obvious we're going to hate it in Utah. But I actually hate that it's even part of the conversation around an NFL playoff game that was as good as that Buffalo Chiefs AFC Championship game was last night. It's part of the conversation now, no matter what happens with Patrick Mahomes. The Buffalo Bills do not get the same kind of benefit of the doubt, I suppose. I mean, rookie Cole Bishop, I'm watching Pat McAfee's on the television in front of me right now. They just showed the replay of the would-be interception for Cole Bishop. You're not getting the extra love if you're in that Bills uniform or if you're a rookie. And the Chiefs, especially Patrick, it's more Patrick Mahomes than it is the Chiefs. It's Patrick Mahomes. They protect him.
Yeah, they do.
They want to bubble wrap that guy. They want to make sure that any of the out-of-bounds hits or the late hits or whatever don't affect Patrick Mahomes negatively. And that makes sense. As much as I hate for it to be an accepted phenomenon in pro sports, it makes sense to take care of your best product. Like, if you have a new car in your driveway or in your garage, and then you have the old beater, like my wife's car is nice, okay? Now, the interior of it is absolute chaos because we have 3 young children, but her car is new and it's nice, and I don't want that car getting door dings. I don't want that car getting scratches. My car is, it's fine for me. I don't need anything fancy. But if I come out and someone has pushed their shopping cart into my bumper, I'm just like, dang it. It doesn't really bother me. If I'm driving a G-Wagon and someone throws their cart into my door, I'm going to be upset about that. That's where the NFL is at with Patrick Mahomes, right? He is the fancy car, and you treat it a little bit differently. It's a natural thing. It's not my favorite thing. But we've seen it in every other sport, and it's become too much a part of the conversation in the NFL. As the Super Bowl is set, the matchup is set, a rematch from a couple seasons ago, Eagles and Chiefs, and we've got now 2 weeks for people to be talking about, well, but it's the Eagles against the referees and the Chiefs. Not going to love that. Am going to love the opportunity for Britton Covey to get a Super Bowl ring. I guess either way, if you're a Ute fan, Britton Covey gets a ring or Alex Whittingham gets a ring. Another one. Right? No Utah players active on that Chiefs roster right now, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a Ute interest in the Super Bowl, at least. You would have felt, I think, a stronger connection had it been the Buffalo Bills making it to the Super Bowl, because Cole Bishop got the start in that AFC Championship game. Dalton Kincaid has been a nice little accessory for that Bills offense. And you want to talk about a guy who's going through it today. Dalton Kincaid. Now, we have the benefit of seeing what this guy really is for a few seasons as a football player. We know what it looks like. All right? Dalton Kincaid is special. Dalton Kincaid was special. Dalton Kincaid will be special. Dalton Kincaid is elite. Now, a crucial fourth down play, Josh Allen, being Josh Allen, evades some pressure, survives long enough to get the throw out. Dalton Kincaid has to kind of make an awkward break, come back toward the ball, going inside, leaves his feet, dives for this catch. It glances off his forearm. His hands aren't really super involved. It was going to be one of those like cradling catches, as often is the case when you have to dive flat out. And it goes off, I think it was his right forearm, and it's an incomplete pass. Was it a catchable ball? Yes. Have we seen Dalton Kincaid make that catch and catches more acrobatic and more difficult than that? Yes. Is he just absolutely despondent after that game and today probably and for the next however long because he didn't make that catch? I mean, most likely, yes. It is the second week in a row that the Kansas City Chiefs have been lucky enough to be on the benefiting side of a typically shorthanded tight end not making a catch that he would typically make. Not as directly this would lead to a score. This would lead to an extension of the game as the Mark Andrews drop. And obviously, when you're talking about a rookie, you're talking about someone like Dalton Kincaid and a more difficult catch. There's more forgiveness to it, and that is not even just. He's going to have an opportunity to make that catch probably a half dozen times in very crucial situations over the course of his career, because his career is going to extend for many, many years in the NFL. And let's say he gets 6 chances to make a catch like that. He's now going to catch 5 of them. I just feel gutted for Dalton Kincaid. And you saw his former coaches offering their support, his current coaches offering their support, his former teammates offering their support, his current teammates offering their support. Just brutal for the Bills Mafia, brutal for Josh Allen, who made the throw, brutal for Dalton Kincaid, who 9 times out of 10, 5 times out of 6, 88 times out of 90, he makes that catch. And just in that particular moment, it didn't come through for him. So unfortunate. How do you bounce back from something like that? Well, part of it, and Zach, you pulled the sound for me, right? Dawson Knox, who plays the same position, is sort of the veteran, the elder statesman in that position room, was asked about that. How do you lift up your teammate after an unfortunate situation like that? Listen to what Dawson Knox, another Bills tight end, had to say about Dalton Kincaid's drop.
When you're running full speed one way and Josh has 3 guys rushing him and he's got to throw it up, and then Dalton had to turn around. It would have been an absolutely incredible play if it happened, but there's not a single person in here that's going to put the blame on him. I mean, we wouldn't be in this game if it weren't for Dalton. The work he puts in, what he brings to this offense, it's invaluable. So, I mean, I'm going to try to make sure he doesn't tell himself any lies or believe anything that's just not true, because he expects himself to make that play. But, I mean, would have been incredible if he did. But, you just can't let him get down in the dumps because of it. We truly wouldn't be in this game if it weren't for Dalton.
Good to see that he's got teammates like that. Not a surprise, obviously, because the Bills are in the position they are in because of that mentality as a team. Just a really tough scenario for a rookie who's had an awesome season for the Buffalo Bills and was a big part of, like you heard Dawson Knox say, was a big part of them being in that position in the first place. He finished the game, Dalton Kincaid did, with 2 catches for 13 yards. On the season, he had 44 catches, about 10 yards a catch, 2 touchdowns. A nice little it's a nice little rookie season. It's a high-quality rookie season.
Wasn't he a rookie last year?
Oh, sorry, you're right. 2023. Sorry, why did I keep calling him a rookie? No, the young man.
The young man, there you go.
No, hold on. This is his rookie season, right?
No, he was drafted last year. The year before this, he was drafted the 24th pick because Buffalo traded up for Kincaid.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. I remember watching this draft.
Young, I don't know why I kept calling him a rookie. Dalton Kincaid is going to be a big part of what the Buffalo Bills do moving forward. You hate seeing that happen for him in a year where everything seemed like, the Bills, if anyone is going to beat this Kansas City team in the AFC, all respect to the Baltimore Ravens, who came so very close to doing it. It feels like the Bills are more equipped because of the well-roundedness of that team. Yeah. There's less reliance for the Bills, if it's fair to say that, on Josh Allen than there is of the Ravens on Lamar Jackson. The Buffalo Bills have a greater depth of talent on their roster than I think the Baltimore Ravens did. That was a Ravens defense, which is wild to say because the best version of the Ravens we've ever seen was like kind of a terrible offense, but an unbelievable defense. The defense was kind of stitched together for the Ravens and a little bit slapped together and taped together. And there's some guys that are a little bit longer in the tooth that they rely too much on in that Ravens defense. And the Buffalo Bills felt like, although they did get banged up, and I think Cole Bishop had a really solid game, I don't know if for the Bills it was ideal for him to be your starting safety in that game, but is what it is. I thought he played well enough that it was not anything you needed to fuss about. It felt like the Bills, with a few different play calls, with some strategic improvements, namely letting Cook cook. When you've got a guy going for 6+ yards a touch, you have to give him the ball more often. James Cook had a total of 16 touches in this game. He was averaging 6.5 yards a carry. He had 2 touchdowns on 13 carries. He was your second leading wide receiver, 3 catches for 49 yards. 16 touches for that guy in a game where he is so productive, not enough.
Yeah, and when we look at the last 2 weeks of James Cook, I mean, that guy was cooking. Like, you and I were talking about this pre-production and everything, and I mentioned that, like, the play calling in the second half was not great, and that's, like, part of your point, too, is, like, you're not letting James Cook
Here's the
do
thing.
what he wants.
Like, I understand there's a hesitation to take the ball out of the hands of a player like Josh Allen when he's playing well, right? 22 of 34, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You're up against Patrick Mahomes. Threw for a score. Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes again. Not the best version of Patrick Mahomes, but what did he do? He used his legs again, 2 touchdown runs for Patrick Mahomes. And that is not just because he's a good player. That is because offensively, Andy Reid and company recognize something. All right, the Buffalo Bills are good enough up front in their front seven. They're tackling well enough today that they're focused well enough today on taking away our attack with Kareem Hunt, who only had less than 4 yards of carry. So when they got down into the red zone, they let Patrick Mahomes run the ball. You don't have to protect him anymore. You're near the end of the road. You're not worried about bubble wrapping him. And the play calling for the Kansas City Chiefs allowed Patrick Mahomes to do what Patrick Mahomes does and make timely plays. And on the other side of things, you were over-indexed. You were forcing certain things instead of taking what the Chiefs gave you. And what the Chiefs were giving you all day was chunk plays and productive plays from James Cook. Getting away from that and only letting that guy touch the ball 16 times in a game where just in the run game, he's giving you 6.5 yards per carry. In the passing game, 16 yards per touch. I'll stop showing the replay. They keep showing the replay of the drop, of Dalton Kincaid's drop. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to think about what it means for that guy to be sitting in like a team facility on an airplane with an iPad watching, maybe he's going to grab his Starbucks, whatever, and there's a television screen somewhere that is just replaying that miss, that drop. Yeah. I just don't want to even imagine what that's like for Dalton Kincaid right now. I'm so happy that his teammates are feeling the right way about it.
Yeah, I like it too. And it's like every time you're on a football team, you're basically your second family. And I all respect with that. So football is family.
Anyway, the Kansas City Chiefs are headed to another Super Bowl. They still have a chance to three-peat, make NFL history as the first team ever to go back to back to back as NFL champions. They will take on a Philadelphia Eagles squad that's coming off a dominant victory over a really solid Washington Commanders team that I think pretty much everyone will agree is going to be a problem moving forward. But the Cinderella story, like that, had to turn back into a pumpkin at some point. And 55-23 loss for the Washington Commanders against Philadelphia. Record for points scored in an NFC championship game. Saquon continues to have just a ridiculous season. I want to know if A.J. Brown did we get any shots of A.J. Brown reading his book on the sideline this week?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Did anyone find a shot of A.J. Brown reading his book in a game where he was actually productive and had a game where they used him a lot? 6 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Was there any of that going on? Was there any tomfoolery with the literature, A.J. Brown? Or did you just realize, you know what? We're trying to win a football game. It's not about me. 15 carries, 118 yards for Saquon. That's almost 8 yards a carry for those of you doing the math. 3 touchdowns for him. And Jalen Hurts. Is Jalen Hurts a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? There was a lot of conversation heading into these playoffs about whether or not you could win despite Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, 20 of 28, 246. That's almost 9 yards per play. He passed for a touchdown. And much like Patrick Mahomes, who we're going to talk about as being one of the best players ever, Jalen Hurts ran for some touchdowns. In fact, he ran for 3 touchdowns. I heard a really excellent trivia question on the late night. It was Ben Maller. It was the super late night as I was waiting for my car to get jumped, listening on my phone. Never before, or excuse me, the last time someone in a conference championship game threw for over 200 yards and also ran for 2 touchdowns at the quarterback position was, do you know? Do you know?
It's a current player, isn't it?
It's not a current player. Ooh. But it's a player who's modern enough that even someone as young as you watched him play.
Michael Vick?
Close.
Ooh. I can't think of the top of my head.
Post-Michael Vick. It's Cam Newton.
Oh, yeah.
We all forget that Cam Newton had, that brief stint of MVP caliber production.
Until my Broncos beat him in the Super Bowl 50.
Congratulations to your Broncos.
Von Miller.
So your Super Bowl matchup is set. Philadelphia taking on Kansas City. And it led me to my my other poll question for the day. What fans have it worst? Cowboys fans haven't had a championship in almost 30 years. Doesn't seem like anything's real close. I threw in my 49ers because I think the window is closing, and it has been 30 years since you've won a championship. You've been so close several times. I think this iteration of your Super Bowl window is closing. Maybe that's the pessimist in me. Or the Bills, who obviously are still waiting. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Always almost there, never actually there. Which fan base has it worst? At Real OC Sports, 877-353-0700. You can always weigh in. Love to hear from each and every one of you. We're going to talk these NFL playoffs with Sean Syed, who joins me next. Then Scott Mitchell at noon. Andy Larson in our 1 o'clock hour. We're just getting started on a Monday. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
to the left side. Barkley's got a lane to the 50, to the 45, spin move to the 40. Barkley still going. Zigzags inside. 20, 15, 10. Touchdown, Saquon Barkley. He is incredible. 60 yards spinning away from would-be tacklers. He just does it over and over again. Eagles take the lead.
A 60-yarder for Saquon Barkley, courtesy of Westwood One. Ian Eagle, Kurt Warner on that call. NFL insider Sean Sayed joins me here on the Sean O'Connell Show to talk about the Super Bowl matchup that is set. Before we get there, a reminder to all of you out there, ESPN 792.1 FM, we have a cash kickoff going on. It's time for your shot to win $1,000 to pay your bills. Text CASH to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. That's CASH to 508-777-1000. NFL analyst Sean Sayed, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Always exciting to be talking to someone with a strong name like that you have in Sean, and it's going to be so exciting to talk about that conference championship weekend heading into the Super Bowl.
An unbelievable close to the weekend, I think, with that AFC championship game. I honestly believe that the NFC championship game, we just played a highlight from it, I thought it was going to be a lot more competitive. The Philadelphia Eagles have this ultimate trump card, and it's not Saquon Barkley for me. It is that offensive line. Does this offensive line in Philadelphia stack up with the all-time great units?
It certainly feels like it. And what's crazy about this game is, their center started the game on the sidelines where Cam Jurgens came in with a back injury. They had Landon Dickerson, who's a great left guard, move over. Guy hasn't really snapped in games that much since college. For him to perform really well, you have Tyler Steen coming in at left guard making plays, and then Jurgens is able to come in later. So not just how good they are at the top end when you have Lane Johnson, when you have Jordan Mailata, but their depth and the fact that their backups have all the details down pat so well. And then you're getting Mekhi Becton, a really, really good year where now you're earning him. And he has earned himself a lot of money. So it's so great for the Eagles to have that. And it makes sense when you consider this is, I think, the best constructed roster in the NFL. And it really starts up front on the offensive line.
And obviously behind that offensive line, you've got Saquon Barkley. He ended up with another phenomenal day, almost 8 yards a carry. And the dude just continues to, I guess, build the case for being not only the best running back in the league, one of the best overall players in the league. At a position that we have for years kind of de-emphasized, what is Saquon Barkley showing us about that running back spot?
What's so great for Saquon this year is I think that his vision, it's just so good. His feel for, the blocking scheme is going one way. He can trust everything when he makes cuts. And I think when you look at some of his Giants film, I think the question was, hey, is he trying to bounce this outside because he's trying to create a home run? Is nothing open? Is he feeling it right? And it just goes to show that when you have a strong offensive line and a good kind of overall environment, the most talented players are really going to be able to succeed. And we think about Derrick Henry with the Ravens. So I think you can look at some of these running backs who, Saquon Barkley's not an old man by any means, but he's on a different part of his just NFL career arc in terms of seasons. And for running backs, when you look at age curves and all these fancy schmancy things, as you get a little older, it is a little bit tougher. But I think as literally, sports medicine is getting better, you're able to conserve these guys a little bit more. And when you put them into really positive situations where the line is good, where the run schemes are good, you're going to be able to have a lot of success. So I would love for it to earn a bunch of running backs a lot of money because I would love for all those guys to get paid just because their jobs are so hard on a game-to-game basis.
Which franchise has a greater seller's remorse, the Giants or the Titans?
Oh man, that is a tough one. I feel like I lean a little bit towards the Titans just because look, even if you don't agree with the Giants' move, I think you can look at it and say Saquon Barkley would not have had the same season with the Giants as he did as he did as an Eagle, even if we assume that he had the exact same level of talent. So I feel like I have a hard time picturing running like that for the Giants. I think it's an extra kind of twist of the knife when it's your division rival in the Eagles. So I still lean towards A.J. Brown just because, the Titans, gosh, they really could use him. Obviously, they're in a different kind of phase of their rebuilding process, being down at the Shrine Bowl this weekend, seeing Mike Bergonzi and Brian Callahan, are they going to draft a quarterback? They're in a whole entire different world of it a little bit. So I softly towards the Titans. The Giants story is a little bit more fun, though.
That's fair. As long as we're talking about the running back position, one of the prevailing narratives right now, and I am perpetuating it myself, I just spent 10 minutes in the first segment on it. It felt like the Bills missed an opportunity to not give James Cook the ball a little bit more in that game. And I know it's hindsight, but 13 carries, 85 yards, 3 catches, 49 yards. He was having a day. Should Buffalo have given him a few more touches in that game?
No, it's tough when you look at it overall because you have Josh Allen. He can absolutely break any ceiling you put over him. I do think Allen came out of that game a little bit, or the start of the game at least, struggling just a touch. And like you mentioned, when you got Cook going in that middle part of the game, you were just running over the Chiefs kind of over and over. So it could have been that. At the same time, the Bills had a chance to win this game. They really, really did. It was not a situation where, oh, man, you don't get the ball back in halftime. They made the stops that they needed to make. You get 2 stops coming out of the half. You force a field goal late. You have the chance to go down and do it. So it's always hard for me to say, hey, do you want to kind of move things overall in a game where I think both teams scored 4 touchdowns and kicked a field goal? Those 2-point conversions in situations kind of make a little bit of the difference there. But Sean, I just don't know how Bills fans do it. Another season kind of going through it. Of course, this season their expectations were a little bit lower overall just based on kind of their roster construction. And you just hope that Allen's able to continue to come back year after year. And, Cook had a good season. Now we just did the running back discussion. You think, all right, well, is that a player that, they're going to earn themselves a big contract? Does that change how you either play the position, have the position, or kind of mold things around it? So, I'm a little excited, I guess, to watch the Bills kind of continue their phase where they have sustained so much success. It's just not the ultimate success yet, unfortunately.
Sean Sad, my guest here, talking NFL playoffs. We are now down to the Super Bowl matchup. It'll be Eagles and Chiefs. Is there any reason for us to believe that the Eagles will get it done against this Chiefs team and prevent the three-peat?
You know what? I do. I do think there is reason. When I look at it, again, the best roster in the National Football League is constructed in Philadelphia. I really believe that. Now, you could say the best player, unfortunately, plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, unfortunately for the Eagles. That is, I think that the Eagles can run the ball on the Chiefs, where they can run the ball on pretty much anyone. But the Chiefs' run defense, towards that back half of the year, it struggled a little bit. We saw them give up a bunch of yards to James Cook. So there's a chance for the Eagles' run game to be consistent in that way. The Eagles' passing game just had their best game of the entire season, where it finally feels like they've unlocked all of these different parts that they have. Kellen Moore had an incredible game, or at least his best game of his time with the Eagles. So I think you can feel decent there. And look, the Eagles have the best defense in football. They just do. They have Vic Fangio, who has done an awesome job this season. He has played coached against the Chiefs a bunch. I thought his first game plan, again, the regular season against the Chiefs last year, where you have all these different ways to deal with Travis Kelce, I thought that was a really, really good game plan. Now, would I pick the Eagles as favorites? I'm not really sure yet. I feel like I have a little bit of time to still figure out who I'm going to pick in this game. But it doesn't feel like a situation where it's like, oh, man, we need to hand the Chiefs the crown right away. Now, there's obviously a very good chance that they do win, but there are a lot of reasons for optimism, I think, if you look at it from an Eagles perspective.
Is Jalen Hurts one of the reasons for optimism? I don't necessarily love the narrative around him, his ability, whether or not he's a liability on this team. Obviously they're good everywhere, but how good is Jalen Hurts in your mind?
When Hurts is kept clean in the pocket, he can do every single thing that you need him to do. So I think that this game against the Commanders was a great example of it, where when he's in that clean pocket, 18 for 20, 216 yards, and a touchdown. That is high-level football play. Now, when he's pressured, he was 2 for 8. You have kind of 4 throwaways when leaving the pocket. He only took 2 sacks. So in that Rams game, you take a bunch more sacks. I think they're on maybe a few different spots. We've seen Jalen Hurts play very well in a Super Bowl. We're just off the game where Jalen Hurts played really, really well. I absolutely think that he has the tools to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He has the players around him to help him become a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So it's been tough, I think, at times this season where it feels like they've kind of prioritized, hey, if you're in a 50-50 situation, just hold on to the ball. We are a run the ball first, play tough defense type team. We do not want to turn the ball over. That is what's going to kill us, and it feels like he hasn't cut the ball loose on some of those throws. He looks really good against the Commanders, and I think I hold on to that really tightly, being the last game that they played, feeling like he has all the ability. So I can understand why someone will look at Jalen Hurts' kind of player profile and be like, oh, I would be hard-pressed to say that he's a better quarterback in this matchup, but the way that they played against the Commanders, it gives me a lot of reason to feel like this can be a unit that, hey, if you can figure out some of the kind of pass rush looks that you're going to get from Steve Spagnuolo, I think you can find a way to win this game through the air.
Speaking of the Commanders, are the Commanders now a problem in the NFC this year and moving forward? They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league on a rookie deal that should allow them to fill in the gaps around him. Are the Commanders suddenly a big-time factor?
I mean, with Jaden Daniels, absolutely is. I think the story of the season in so many ways, just his performance this year, watching him mature, watching him do things that you don't always see on his college film, the way that he's able to avoid pressure at some of those points kind of in the earlier parts of the postseason. They have a lot of roster holes to fill. They have a lot of space to grow. It's going to be interesting to see, once you hit that quarterback selection, you can really do a lot of fun stuff. Like that's the key piece that unlocks that you have him on a rookie contract. I think Adam Peters as a general manager is smart in the way that he handles roster building. So I don't want to just do they're going to be back next year. We do that with the Texans, and they just fired their offensive coordinator. So there's always things that can go wrong, but it's hard not to feel optimistic about a Washington Commanders team that, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league this season just based on their offensive line. So I think things are pointing up. Now, will you get back to this exact point where you're just a game away from the Super Bowl? It might take a few iterations, but certainly in a conference where I think you feel comfortable with some of the matchups overall, it's going to be fun to watch the Commanders keep playing football.
So I think people are getting irritated by the consistency of the Chiefs. Are we getting bored of the Chiefs' success? Chiefs fatigue, has it settled in for you?
It has not settled in at all because, this could be the first three-peat that we ever see. I can understand, like you want to have different teams and everything like that, but I don't know, think about the NBA, right? Like as LeBron and Steph get a little bit older, obviously there's Jordan people, obviously in the NFL, there's Brady people. I just think it's hard for me to justify getting bored with greatness when it's at this level and you have a quarterback in Patrick Mahomes that he's just, his playoff performance is so far ahead of so many historic quarterbacks. So I just don't want to underappreciate something that I'm going to be telling, hopefully I get to live a long life. I'm going to be telling every single person that I can about it, about Patrick Mahomes' performance. So, let's not get bored with greatness.
Do you believe that games are officiated differently for the Chiefs than other teams?
I personally do not. I think that I can understand why someone who is watching all of these Chiefs games and sees, there are calls that are going to go both ways. I generally feel like in the end, on average, it's in the wash where it's like, that one 50-50 call went one direction, that second 50-50 call went in an opposite direction. Now, I'm a firm proponent of having more ability for the kind of replay judge, or you send it to New York where they're able to make kind of a quick call to correct a play. I think sometimes you see the NFL where they'll either send a fine on a play that wasn't called a penalty or not send a fine on a play that was called a penalty. That's not an admission of being incorrect from the NFL, but it gives you, I think, a little bit of a feeling of, all right, well, when they looked at it again, they didn't feel like that contact was in a spot that it wasn't allowed to be. So, again, I understand the narrative. I think when you have a team that has won 2 Super Bowls in a row and is on its path to win its third, you have to find different ways. But this offense was ruthlessly efficient in that game against the Bills. I do think that people are pointing to the kind of sneak that it seemed like, I may have thought that Allen did get a first down on that it ends up not being overturned, where, those kinds of plays are just not overturned. So overall, I do feel like it's in the wash. I get why people say it. I just think that, teams really, when you kind of swing for the Chiefs, you better not miss, and it feels like people are missing a little bit too much.
Does the NFL need ball spotting technology? We hear people talk about it in tennis. They finally use it with VAR in soccer. It's a little bit more difficult, I guess, with the nose of the football and the tail of the football or whatever. The conversation comes up maybe twice a year? Is it time for the NFL especially to institute some kind of technology to help spotting the ball and those first down calls be a little more accurate?
If it was possible, just like 1,000,000,000%, absolutely. It is way too hard to spot a football, like live when you're watching it, when you're on the sideline there doing it. Now, there are problems, right? There's literally like the shape of the football when you consider the shape of a soccer ball versus the shape of a tennis ball, the way that cameras are directly pointed on things, the way it's kind of isolated, because even that Josh Allen quarterback sneak, if you had all the cameras in the world, there might be a chance that it's still a little bit covered up. Now, again, I do feel like it felt like a little bit of a first down. So I would love for there to be a push. Now, I think they used it in this preseason, which sometimes they'll push things or try things out a bit in the preseason, or obviously in baseball, right? You try it in the minors for a year and then you bring it up to the majors. So I do think they want that, right? Like the NFL is obviously, I think they'd be $1 billion business no matter what. Sometimes at the product level is at, but I do think that they're trying to push in that direction. It just, all the people that I've talked to that have worked in the tech, they work on these really fancy, like driveline type kind of cameras. Apparently it is just like a little bit harder than they would hope. So I do hope that they figure out, because it would be great. Like there's obviously like beauty in some of the ambiguity and things in football, but having things that should be relatively controllable, I think you'd hope that they're able to figure that out.
Well, it would make my job a little bit harder, right? Because it takes away a whole segment after game day when you don't have any referee calls to debate. Like it's one of the things that has made baseball interesting for years and is going to go away pretty soon in baseball. I was sitting at minor league games this year with our Salt Lake affiliate and watching the replay of strikes called, and they've gotten the system down pretty well. It's going to be in the majors sooner than later. It takes 2 seconds to challenge a call, and then they're just like, oh, sorry, umpire, you were wrong. That's going to be wild when it happens, like at an NFL level, if it ever happens at an NFL level.
Then it gives us just more time to talk about things like the individual stories of these players. Like, even if you're bored with Patrick Mahomes, how many times is a guy going to get to an AFC championship this early in his career? And then you can start doing, there's always going to be space like, oh, well, do you compare Patrick Mahomes to LeBron? Is Patrick Mahomes as good as Brady? What about can Josh Allen be like Peyton Manning? I feel like, Sean, you're going to have a lot of space to talk about a lot of stuff. I would prefer that we don't have to worry about, oh, man, was this a first down? Was this ball spotted weird? And then we can focus on some more about these players.
Is Patrick Mahomes as good as Tom Brady?
This is a tough one. So my nephew goes into school, and he wakes up this morning and he asks his dad, my brother, oh, did Tom Brady ever beat Patrick Mahomes? And we could tell him, hey, yes, he absolutely did. Obviously, they have a good back and forth. I think that by the end of it, I do feel like we're going to say that Mahomes was the GOAT. And it's hard to, capture the just internal feeling of like, man, when Brady has the ball, it's just like a death for the other team. Like, you are not going to be able to do anything. And I do think that Mahomes has that feeling. When I look at just like the top end playoff performances, of course, Brady has had, good defenses. Patrick Mahomes had good defenses. I don't always love leading on those types of arguments. And it may just be that it's more of a modern thing. It's a little bit more in kind of recent history. They play the game obviously very different. But I think by the time we're all said and done, I think Mahomes will end up being the one that we turn to the most.
Who's a better coach, Andy Reid or Bill Belichick?
That's a real good one too. I think that the way that Belichick had to do things with his roster. Obviously, you have, Tom Brady is a lovely thing to have. I do like that Andy Reid has done it in multiple spots where he was able to have success in Philadelphia and then go to Kansas City as well. I lean Belichick. I think I like to give the defensive guys a little bit of extra credit just because it's so hard to sustain excellent defensive play, season after season after season. And then, of course, Andy Reid has done a great job hiring staff where you have Steve Spagnuolo that's done a great job. So I think at this point, I lean Belichick for two guys that are, I think, going to enjoy a lot of time in the Hall of Fame together.
Okay, I'm asking this next question. It's completely self-serving because I'm a lifelong 49ers fan. Has that Super Bowl window closed?
Oh, man, it makes me so sad thinking about the 49ers, just how good they were last year, how close they were. And it feels like, hey, it's not even windows. Like, it really isn't windows. It's just these little kind of keyholes that you're hoping to kind of get through. Now, their team is going to have to evolve at the same time. I mean, you still have so many of the component parts there. I don't think that Like, I guess this specific window, this specific iteration of this kind of team, maybe because you're going to have different parts of the team. Your defensive line is just kind of continuing to have attrition kind of year over year. You may have a new cornerback next year. You're hoping to build differently in the offensive line. Trent Williams this time is getting closer to his retirement. I still feel like, I have so much faith in Kyle Shanahan just as an offensive play designer, as someone who's able to put that up. Once the, Brock Purdy contract, assuming that I assume that they are going to have a large extension around, when that hits, then I think we really look at it as a new iteration of a team. But I still think, I have a lot of faith in the 49ers. I root pretty hard for Kyle Shanahan and his success. So I think that there is absolutely a path for them to continue to have sustained success.
Sean, you have a law degree, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Is this what you were supposed to do with that law degree?
I mean, is there anything better to do with the law degree than talk about if Brock Purdy is going to be able to have success in the future, Sean? I would say that this is probably the best use case for someone that went to law school. Now we get to – there are important legal things when you talk about the rules. Like we had the thing in the Eagles game where you have a situation where the defense is going off sides a bunch. Are you allowed to – award them a touchdown? I would argue, I would tell my parents, hey, I'm still using that law degree just a little bit.
I love it. You're in the right spot. You're incredible at what you do. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Talk again soon.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Sean Syed at Syed Schemes on Twitter. That's SYED Schemes. There are very few things that give me more pleasure than when you hear about someone who is like supposed to be a doctor, supposed to be a lawyer, supposed to be, I don't know, some sort of like time-honored, safe, well-respected job, and they just cannot do it. The passion for sport drives them somewhere else. I mean, Mike Leach, that was his story. Sean Syed, William and Mary Law School, has produced a great mind in NFL analysis instead. You got to love it. All right, the Hot Lunch is coming next here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Today and every day, the show is brought to you by our friends at Les Schwab Tires. They've got wheels, they've got tires, they've got accessories for whatever it is you drive. Stop by, tell them OC sent you. Their pros will get the job done right the very first time. Hot Lunch coming on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Hot lunch on the Sean O'Connell Show. We got Scott Mitchell joining us in about 5 minutes. Talk about these NFL playoffs, talk about the Utes, etc. Scott Mitchell will join us at noon. For the hot lunch today, I want to touch on another poll question I put out there, but more the reason why I put the poll question out there. Is it harder to reload a roster with great players or to replace great coaches? This is an important question because neither of those things, great players and great coaches, live in a vacuum. Great players make coaches look like great coaches. Great coaches make players look like great players. It's hard to find the chicken and the egg sometimes. The whole Bill Belichick, Tom Brady thing extends way more across college sports especially. And the reason I ask this is because right now, the arms race in college football is happening in the wildest way. Did you see what happened at Ohio State? Ohio State lost its defensive coordinator. Yes, the Ohio State Buckeyes, whose defensive coordinator put together literally the number one defense in all of college football. Jim Knowles is no longer the Ohio State defensive coordinator. In fact, he was not even invited to the parade, the celebration, because he was deliberating job opportunities elsewhere. That is how cutthroat it is right now in college sports. Is it harder for Ohio State to replace a guy that gets the most out of those elite players? Because Ohio State's always going to have elite players. Newsflash, Ohio State is always going to have 5-star players and 4-star players. You could sneeze at Ohio State and the loogie's going to land on somebody in your own backyard or some kid who's in town because you brought him in from Southern California, you brought him in from Texas, you brought him in from Florida, you brought him in from Maryland. Ohio State's always going to have great players. They've never not had great players. There have been times where Ohio State was not a national championship contender because they didn't have great coaches. And their defensive coordinator is now on a 3-year deal as an assistant coach that will make him $3+ million per year as an assistant coach in college football. And Zach, you know where he's headed, right? This is not for him to go to the NFL, which is what happened to Notre Dame. Lost their guy to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I saw that one.
This man, Jim Knowles, number one defense he just coordinated in the land, national championship team. He's going to Penn State, a conference opponent.
Why would you leave Ohio State when you just won a national championship and coached the number one defense?
Because they didn't want to acknowledge that he was a huge reason for it, and they didn't want to pay him like he was a huge reason for it. That's the big problem here. Look, money for these guys is not, it's not about paying the bills. It's not about securing a financial future. Guys like Jim Knowles, who've been at the elite level of college football for a long time, these guys have enough money, okay? They've got a financial advisor that's squirreled away their retirement. They've got the vacation home, and they've got the real home, right? These guys don't need the money. What they need is they need someone to tell them, we acknowledge that our number one defense was a product of your work and your brain and your mind, and we're going to pay you as a reflection of that. He doesn't need $3 million a year. He doesn't need $3 million a year. There's nobody who needs $3 million a year. But if somebody is telling you, you're the reason Ohio State won a national championship, and we want to pay you a salary that reflects that, he's going to take that job instead of saying, well, Ryan Day, can I just stay here for $2.5 million a year? That's what this is about. It's the ego bump. It's the hey, dude, we believe in you. And so my question for Ohio State, my question for Notre Dame, my question for Notre Dame twice, actually, because they also lost their GM, which is now an important position in college football. They lost their GM to USC, and they lost their defensive coordinator to the Cincinnati Bengals. Is it going to be harder for them to replace those guys or to replace great players? I think one could make an argument. I will listen to both sides of it. that it's harder to find great coaches than it is to find great players. There are a lot of great players. We see them all in college football every year. Now, I'm not talking about the number one guy in the whole country at each position. I'm not talking about everybody needs to be an Ashton Genty, right? Yeah. I'm talking about all-conference, maybe all-American caliber players. They don't grow on trees, but there are more of them that we can list off every season than there are great coaches who have elevated guys beyond what their actual ability is. And I think if you're Ohio State, you might live to regret this. Yes, you're going to get great players every year. Yes, that's an appealing job that everybody in America should want. If Morgan Scalley gets a call, do you want to be the defensive coordinator for Ohio State? That's something he has to consider.
Yeah.
Jay Hill would have to consider something like that, right? Because that job is just one of those jobs. But I think Ohio State's going to have an easier time finding an all-American high school player than finding somebody who's as good at the defensive coordinating job as the dude who just coordinated the number one defense in all of the land.
None the fact develop some of the greatest defensive players that could possibly go into the NFL as well.
That's the other thing, right? Is you get these guys, somebody's got to shape them, somebody's got to develop them. Is it easier when they're 4 and 5 stars? Presumably, yes. But how many teams recruit at that elite level and then those guys never end up making like the best play you've ever seen on national television? Sack, strip, fumble, scoop, score, Jack Sawyer. And he might be the wrong example because his career was supposed to be better than it ended up being. But this season was pretty damn good. Is it harder to reload a roster with great players or to replace great coaches? At Real OC Sports, go cast your vote in the poll. Right now, 57% of the votes coming in that coaches are harder to find. I'm going to ask Scott Mitchell this question when he joins us next because he's played the football at every single level. He knows. The Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
and goal. Backpedaling in the shotgun from the Chiefs 1. The Buffalo quarterback Allen, arms outstretched, shotgun snap. He runs, now he pitches. Cook over the right tackle, dives, he lunges, ball in his hand, touchdown! Touchdown Buffalo! They've taken the lead late in the third on a long drive of 80 yards. 1-yard touchdown run by James Cook. It's 22-21. The Bills have taken the lead.
That sound courtesy of our friends at Westwood One. Kevin Harlan on the call for the AFC Championship game. That was a James Cook 1-yard touchdown run, the one where he reached across the line. A lot of things going on in the NFL. Your Super Bowl matchup is set. And, of course, the coaching carousel continues to turn. Pete Carroll introduced as the Raiders coach. Aaron Glenn will be running things for the New York Jets. Joining us to talk all things football, our good friend, the Utah football legend, Scott Mitchell, as part of our Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountainland Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com or stop by any of their brick-and-mortar locations. Scott Mitchell, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great, Sean. You know, it's Monday, and it's sunny, and it's good to hear your voice. I'm doing good.
Scott, what are you saying to Dalton Kincaid if you're his quarterback on a day like today?
That's a tough play. You know, a lot of times, you know, he's fighting to get back the ball. I assume that's what you're talking about on the play. You know, it was just kind of a tough play altogether. You know, it's one of those you see some miraculous plays, and some guys make them. You know, I think of Julian Edelman making a crazy catch, David Tyree, you know, kind of off the side of his helmet, and they become folklore, you know, and that they're these amazing catches, and that might have been one kind of in that category a little bit. You know, it was just a tough break. I mean, even Cole Bishop, you know, the interception he had earlier in the game, and just the way he came down to the ground and how the ball just bounced, and that's the cruel part about the playoffs. It's the cruel part about the literal shape of an oblong football. It doesn't bounce your way sometimes, and sometimes it does, and unfortunately, it just didn't. Enough of the bounce didn't go the way of the Buffalo Bills. But as an athlete, you're like, you expect to make that catch. You're sick about it. Mark Andrews, you know, at the Ravens a week earlier, you know, he's probably still beating himself up over it, and it's just hard because you put so much into it, and you lose, and it's just a hard thing to deal with. And I honestly, I don't know how you do. You know, I've taken years and years of therapy, and I still can't get over anything from my days of playing. So it's just a curse.
Well, look, it's only a curse because you're good enough to be in the position to make that play, which I think is something we all have to keep in perspective. These guys are the best of the best of the best, playing for the best teams in the world, and the margin for error is razor thin or absent altogether. That is another year of Kansas City Chiefs punching their ticket to the Super Bowl. Andy Reid continues to be an absolute master. Patrick Mahomes continues to show why he's regarded as the number one quarterback in the NFL right now, and maybe he'll go down as one of the greatest of all time. I just had a guest on who said he thinks Patrick Mahomes, when it's all said and done, will be regarded even more highly than Tom Brady. Most of us didn't play the position at a super high level and can't specifically articulate why Patrick Mahomes is so dang good. Can you?
Well, I think from the very beginning, when he started to play and the way he threw the football jumped off the page. It was like nobody's throwing the football like that. Nobody's thrown the football like that, where he's rolling out to, you know, his left, throws across his body deep down the middle of the field. I mean, you're taught that you never do that. And like it's just a dumb thing to do. You can't complete it, and he did it with such ease, and it made it look normal, and then it became normal. And you know, nobody that I've ever seen play that position threw the ball like Patrick Mahomes like that early on, and he just had this unusual, canny ability to make some incredible plays in so many different situations, and you really, you never went, oh man, that was a dumb bonehead play. Everything seemed very normal, and then you look at his career, because Alex Smith was doing very well with Andy Reid. They go to the AFC Championship game without Alex Smith, and Alex Smith looks like his career is headed in a nice direction. They move up to draft Patrick Mahomes because they love him so much, and they get rid of Alex Smith, who played great because they loved Patrick Mahomes so much. And Patrick Mahomes, like from the time he started, has either been in the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. And the start of his career is just it's insane what he's done. And then the other thing, Sean, that I think is even more impressive is that, and they showed it on television, they've won 17 straight games with one possession or less. So on the last possession, essentially 17 straight games. When you play in the NFL and the pressure of that and the consistency of that, coming through in the clutch, like we always talked about Michael Jordan, is that dude clutch, right? And Michael Jordan goes, I missed as many as I made, but he kind of is known as this clutch player. And you look at Patrick Mahomes, his whole freaking year his career has been a clutch player. Very few times has he ever just not done it. And that is just beyond impressive how his career has started, how the season has been. And if anyone understands how to win and how to win in whatever way possible, it's Patrick Mahomes.
He's a cheat code for sure. And now you look at a Super Bowl matchup, a rematch from a couple seasons ago, Philadelphia back in the mix, and they've got it's a different look, it's a different team than it was a couple seasons ago, but they've got something that very few teams in the NFL or at any level can boast. They've got the best offensive line in football right now, and as we were talking about a little bit earlier on the show, even when they've got some injuries, some bumps and bruises, and they have to rotate guys around, they still have the best offensive line in all of football. It's something we've talked about for years with Utah. We've talked about for years at the college level and the NFL level. Is this offensive line going to be enough to get the Eagles over the hump against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, I don't think it's just the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're playing great defense, and they're playing it real great up front and in the secondary. And they've been able to hold some pretty explosive teams to pretty reasonable games. And Jaden Daniels was pretty spectacular this year. Now, no rookie quarterback's ever made it to the Super Bowl, so he had kind of that going against him. But the Rams were really good, and they were kind of held down. So this not only this offensive line, but this defense, and it kind of flies in the face of where the NFL is today. It's so offensive oriented. It's so pass happy, and to seek some balance and to see really the Eagles predominantly run the ball to success, and having Saquon Barkley and then Jalen Hurts, who kind of stepped up his game as far as rushing last week. It's a tough scenario to handle, and sometimes you just see that anomaly in a team where they kind of go against the norm, but they do so because they're so good. And I think of the Baltimore Ravens in 1999, pretty much won the Super Bowl on a defense that was probably the best that was ever assembled, and special teams and a little bit of offense, and so you don't typically see just one side or one segment of the football be so dominant, but when you do, they can be really special. That's going to be an incredible test to see how this Chiefs team can find a way to win And I think the Chiefs have even been better defensively than they have offensively this season, and even when they won the Super Bowl last year. And so, can they have? Is there enough there? Do they have enough to win it and overcome it? I don't know, but it's going to be a great matchup. Regardless, I mean, I'm really looking forward to just the matchup in and of itself.
Scott Mitchell, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things football. You mentioned the Commanders, and Jaden Daniels would have been the first rookie quarterback to lead his team to a Super Bowl appearance. That fairy tale came to an end because of the Philadelphia Eagles and that defense and the incredible offensive line and Saquon Barkley. But it's clear that he has changed the outlook, the complexion, the hopes, the dreams, everything for that Washington Commanders franchise. He's on that rookie deal, which means he's very, very inexpensive. And look, you've been in the locker room for probably, guys sitting around and having these discussions. It opens a window for the Commanders to add some talent, to overspend on some other guys that can help them, et cetera. What's the right way for them to handle this next couple of years while they have an elite-level quarterback like Jaden Daniels, and he's cheap?
Yeah, if you're the Commanders, you feel like you struck gold. I mean, to have a rookie quarterback come in and play and not have to kind of go through a significant period of development and have him ready. I mean, he was just leaps and bounds above and mature. And it's probably similar to what you saw with the Cincinnati Bengals. They were able to really fill holes and whatever holes there might be in their team, and also really get explosive around a player and get some talent in, and they just have an open checkbook basically to do whatever they want to do, and eventually you're going to have to pay the piper, and I think the 49ers are kind of at that point right now, because then with Brock Purdy, I mean, they got him way cheap, even more than Jaden Daniels, and so there's a real window there. But you see how it kind of works, though. You still have to have everyone play and be healthy, because that kind of happened to Purdy. In fact, it was against the Eagles when he got injured, when I believe they went to the Super Bowl last. And so you do have a window, and I'm sure the Commanders are going to take a swing at it. So they'll be very, very active in potential trades or free agency and being able to really spend some money and have a nice ride with it. And then you get to a point where you go, okay, we have to make some tough choices. And, I'm sure if Jaden Daniels continues on his trajectory, he'll still get paid, but it may limit things. I'm just curious if a quarterback gets in that situation, like where Jaden Daniels could potentially get, where Brock Purdy is right now. Do they go, I mean, $200 million is enough. I could probably get $350, but and is someone that, because Brady did that, he was underpaid his whole career, and whether it was look, the Patriots will cut you if you don't, or if he was savvy enough to say, I'm really interested in a legacy, and I'm really comfortable with. He went the long game and played 20-some years in the NFL, and maybe he made up with it just because he played longer. But to him, it was more important to win championships than it was to just get all the money in the world. And I don't know. It's a tough question to ask yourself, because it's a lot of money. And I just wonder if there's a guy moving forward today, and maybe you see some of these other guys. Joe Burrow, he got paid, and they haven't really been back in the complete team, and they did have to give up some folks, and maybe that's something to study or look at as a player. But right now the Commanders, man, they're in the catbird seat as far as moving forward.
Yeah, I would be very fascinated as a Niners fan. I'd love if Brock Purdy was like, you know what, I don't need $52 million a year or whatever it's going to be. I'll take 40. Even though that won't even have me in the top 10 for NFL quarterback pay, so that we can keep, Christian McCaffrey around, and we can hopefully retain Kittle and Debo and all these guys that I think are either as big of a part or even a bigger part of the 49ers' success. But that's not how contract negotiations typically work. We've seen an example of it. Jalen Brunson took less money in the NBA than his max deal so that the Knicks could add talent around him, and that hasn't translated to a championship for him or them. Not yet, but we'll see if that happens at the NFL level. There was another question I wanted to get into with you, Scott, because the arms race of spending in college football is not just a transfer portal and an NIL thing. There's always the coach situation as well, and I was blown away to see that the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, Jim Knowles, has left Ohio State, and he's taking the same position at a conference rival, at Penn State, and he's making $3.1 million a year to be an assistant coach at the collegiate level. And I can't believe Ohio State let this happen after a guy gives you the number one defense in the country and and a national championship largely because of that defense. You let him walk, especially you let him walk to a conference foe. So I put a poll question up. Is it harder to replace great coaches or reload great players? And I have a team like Ohio State in mind who seems to always be able to have great players. The coach thing is more of a question for me, but I wanted your thoughts.
Wow, that's mind blowing, quite frankly, and good for him. And I think coaches were such an important part of the success you had in college football, as far as the ability to recruit and the ability to you find the right guy and they really kind of move the needle. You look at USC when Pete Carroll went there and really changed things. You look at Urban Meyer's career, where he took Utah to a different level. He took Florida to he took Ohio State to a different level, quite frankly. And Nick Saban and a lot of these coaches, and it just seems that those coaches are extremely valuable. You look at Kenny Dillingham and what he's done at Arizona State, and that has a big impact. You look at what Dan Lanning did at Oregon. Even though Oregon was good, I think he took the program to a different level. But it's a little different now because you're buying your players. And so having the ability to buy the players seems to be it could supplant the value of a coach. You can be the greatest coach in the world, but if you're not getting those really good players, maybe you're not going to be able to compete at a high level. I mean, Penn State seems like one of those programs that's really committed to make a big splash and really do some things. It's a really good question, and I would say it would be a coach before in the past, but it might be players now, just with the change in the whole structure of how you recruit and how you get players in college football.
Yeah, I think that this changing landscape means that we have to wait and see a little bit on how the impact of decisions like this sort of affect the overall power structure. And I can't see a world in which somebody signs off on the idea of let him go to Penn State. Let Morgan Scalley go be the defensive coordinator at BYU because of money. That would be an insane thing, and it seems like that's a big part of what happened at Ohio State. I don't get it.
Well, it might be what happened at Utah. The coach in waiting, the increase in salary, because someone, and I've heard that it was USC, was really maybe paying that crazy kind of money to get a Morgan Scalley out of Utah and at SC, and so there was like, no, we can't let that happen. We've got to keep the guy here. And you look at Kyle, and he's done such a tremendous job at Utah and really brought national relevance to the program, and did it in a way through coaching. but then the NIL comes along, and and there's a lot of schools that were fighting for Cam Rising, and Utah stepped up and paid him. And then, in the last 2 years, he hasn't played, and it's significantly impacted the program's ability to compete for a conference championship, to go to the college football playoffs. And that player had a huge impact on the results for the team. And so you go, I'm sure Utah boosters go, man, we did not get our money's worth when we went and paid the player, but it had an impact on our ability to succeed. And I just still think you got to get the players there, even though you have good coaches. And Kyle Whittingham will probably tell you the same thing.
Well, he's always said it's more about players than it is about him or any other coach. But I think it's ignoring some of the impact that coaches have, because there are plenty of rosters out there that are constructed of guys that we would call good players, that are highly regarded recruits, that just never live up to that potential. And I think that's a coaching thing. But, that's a chicken and the egg argument that you could go back and forth with over and over again. Scott, it's always great catching up with you. We'll have you on again soon.
All right, look forward to it. Thanks, Sean.
Scott Mitchell, the Utah football legend, NFL veteran. It's always great to hear his thoughts on somebody like Patrick Mahomes, a guy who played it at the very highest level, and he played quarterback in the NFL for a very long time. It's not like Scott had a little cup of coffee, was there for 2 or 3 seasons. He had a full, fleshed-out, real career as a starter, as a backup. He did it all. He was around some of the best to ever do it. And for someone like that to tell you why Patrick Mahomes is special, why Patrick Mahomes is different, it's just a little bit more insightful, a little bit more meaningful. All right, Utah basketball school dominant again over the rival. We'll talk about the Lady Utes. We'll talk about the men's running Utes next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Flies it up top to Reese Cross. Now back to Gianna. Open for three left side. And she'll bury another one.
Gianna Neepkins hits the three against BYU, courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Tyson Ewing on that call. Big game again for Gianna Neepkins. She has really – we already knew she was a great player. Gianna Neepkins has really, really stepped it up in the absence of a healthy Kennedy McQueen, knowing that her role on that team is to really, carry the scoring load over and over again. And her ability to do so without complaint is, look, it's pretty impressive what she's been able to do this year. Your Lady Running Utes are once again a tournament-bound team. They're a team that has designs on a Big 12 tournament championship, at least. A regular season conference championship is going to be somewhat difficult because of what's going on above them. But this is a team that I think really could make a splash, especially you saw against BYU, again, victorious against BYU. You saw against BYU the way that not just your leading scorer, not just your obvious star, not just the number one player on your team, but the supporting cast, so to speak, steps up and fills a role. 81-76 is the final score in that one. And obviously, Gianna Neepkins with a really great night. She played 35 minutes. She scored 32 points, which is a career high. 6 of 7 from the three-point line. But also 21 points for Maye Torre as well. If you get 53 points out of those two, if you get 53 points out of any two of your starters, you're going to win a lot of basketball games. Gavin Peterson's squad improves to 15-5. They are now 6-3 in the conference. And Utah on the basketball front, feeling pretty good about the way the rivalry is going this year. The men beat BYU at home. It'll be tough to do away, but they beat BYU at home. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, 81-76 for the women. That was a road game. BYU women's basketball trying to figure some things out. Up next will be Arizona. That's a home game. Then back on the road against a pretty good Texas Tech squad, UCF, Colorado, Arizona State. It's wild how fast this season has gone. You've got a month of basketball left, effectively, before tournament time. And Gavin Peterson has his squad, I think, in a really good spot. We talked about when he joined us on the show, and hopefully we'll get him on, or we'll get a player on sometime this week, probably in the later half of the week. Talked about, the strength of this conference coming from a Pac-12 conference that is, or was at least, the best women's basketball conference in all the land. You know what it's like to prepare week in and week out and go up against elite squads week in and week out. Utah flirting with that top 25, and that flirtation is probably going to continue as the schedule is not super easy. But TCU is a really good team. Kansas State's a really good team. West Virginia is a really good team. Oklahoma State is a good team. Baylor is a good team. The depth, I don't think there's a Stanford level, oh my gosh, this might be the best squad, or Oregon from like 5 years ago, oh my gosh, this might be the best squad in all of college basketball. I don't think there's that level of competition right now, but there's a reason why even with a pretty awesome record, a 15-5 record, you're going to win 20-plus games this year. Even with that, you're probably looking at like a, I don't know, 7-8 seed.
I would say so, yeah.
It's been fun to watch. And when Kennedy McQueen is healthy and back, it's going to be even more fun to watch this Utah women's basketball team.
Yeah, and give credit to Maddie Wilkie, too, for stepping up for Kennedy McQueen while she was out and rehabbing, too.
The men's side of things for Utah basketball, we celebrated, we gloated, we had our fun with the win over BYU, and then the loss to Houston was really just as bad as it gets. credit to Houston. I asked the poll question that day on how you even digest the film for a game like that. You probably don't need to. You probably just throw it away. Over the weekend, it was a loss to Baylor as well, 76-61. The thing that you see in college basketball that makes the product sometimes a little bit less tolerable and has been something that has plagued this Utah men's basketball side for a while. The scoring droughts in college basketball can sometimes get to a level of first kind of aggravation, and then you feel incredulous about it, and then it becomes almost comical. And I don't say that to be condescending, but I looked up the longest scoring drought like ever in an NBA basketball game, and for an NBA basketball game to have a 10-minute scoring drought is prohibitively rare.
Yeah, it's almost a whole quarter.
There was a game 2 years ago where there was a 10-minute scoring drought for, I think it was Charlotte, at a 10-minute scoring drought. And the last time that had happened in the NBA was 2009. So it happens like every 14, 15 years where a team can go on a prolonged scoring drought to the tune of like 10 minutes. That has happened to Utah basketball multiple times this year.
Yeah.
That 10-minute range. You just can't have, and that's a college basketball thing. It's not just the running Utes. We could pull a half dozen team. We could pull a dozen teams or more in college basketball that have been plagued by exactly that. It is, to me, the number one separator of pro basketball and college basketball. The most frustrating delineation between the two of them is there are times that NBA basketball can get really, really ugly, but college basketball can get downright disgusting to watch, where it just, there's a lid on the hoop, nothing goes. And I'm sorry, Baylor's a good team. Obviously, we know that they've got at least one lottery pick, probably. Ezra Asar is a bright spot for this Utah men's basketball team. Good things are going to happen for them if they can continue to get the same kind of production from him. And Jake Wallin, we got to figure out what's going on there. The lack of consistency in the shooting percentage from Gabe Madsen, you just want to see him. He's a good shooter. I want to see him continue to shoot. There's got to be some kind of statute of limitations on how many three-pointers he can chuck up there in a 5-minute scoring drought.
Yeah.
You got to be like, okay, no more threes. All right, don't do it. I don't know. I'm not a basketball coach. I should not be a basketball coach. But so incredibly frustrating to watch a Utah men's basketball team go through those types of lapses where, look, a 10-minute scoring drought is not indicative of just like an off day, you're shooting poorly. It's indicative of a lack of recognition that you have got to get yourself out of that situation with a high percentage shot. Get the ball down into the post, drive and get a layup, find a way to get yourself to the free throw line, whatever it is. 10 minutes without scoring in a basketball game is intolerable.
Yeah,
that makes you want to throw up.
Yeah.
Like the Utah Hockey Club, this is hockey, has very few 10-minute scoring droughts on the season, it feels like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I would we're going to get Craig Smith on again probably next week. And I got to find a way to phrase the question right, but I got to find a way to pick his brain about this. Like, how does it happen where when you get into that, it's been 5 minutes since we scored. It's been 5 minutes and a timeout since we got our last bucket. Okay, now it's been 6 minutes. Now it's been 7 minutes. Now it's been 8 minutes. Now it's been 8. Do you know how long 8 minutes is?
It feels like a long time.
8 minutes is half of a pro fight.
I actually didn't know that. Crazy.
7.5. A regular fight is 15 minutes long. It's 3 5-minute rounds. A title fight is 5 5-minute rounds.
Yeah.
So you can go 15 or you can go 25. Do you know how much happens in that stretch of time, Zach?
So much.
So much happens. We're talking hundreds of strikes thrown. We're talking takedowns. We're talking jiu-jitsu scenarios. We're talking submission attempts and submissions defended. We're talking head kicks landed. A guy gets knocked down, but not all the way out. Like, in that amount of time, you can't score a basket. You can't get to the free throw line one time. That's insane. Like, I could get any one of you, and we could go for a workout. And if I asked you, all right, get on this like assault bike, you know what those are? The bikes that have the handles that also move, or get on this like elliptical machine, or just on this treadmill. I want you to go for 5 minutes as hard as you can. You have to stop after that. You're done. If I said you have to sprint for 10 minutes, you have to sprint until the next Utah basketball bucket goes in, you couldn't do it. You would fall off the treadmill, gasping and dying. You cannot have a scoring drought like that.
Yeah, and I produced this game on Saturday, and there were so many scoring droughts. Baylor players were getting in foul trouble from getting attacked in the paint, but Utah basketball couldn't like get into the paint and score because there's a lid. And then Bill Riley said the same thing. He's like, yeah, there's like a lid or something on this basketball hoop.
I mean, 12 of 20 from the stripe. The poor free throw shooting continues to plague in the most untimely manner, and 76-61. You probably didn't think Utah basketball was going to win that game against Baylor. That's fine. I'm okay with them losing games against really tough competition in a really tough conference.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and beat my chest about how could this happen. Utah basketball needs to be better than this. There's going to be plenty of growing pains left, no matter how strong the progress is for Utah basketball. But you cannot have bad basketball.
No.
You can't. You can have, like, good hustle plays that just don't work out your way. You can't have 10 minutes of no scoring. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for the coaches. It's bad for the players. It's bad for the folks who bought the tickets. It's bad for your television partners. It's bad for anyone who's just clicking by on their way to watch American Idol, whatever it is. You cannot have 10 minutes of a scoring drought.
Yeah, and it was a national game. It was on ESPN 2 on Saturday.
Oh!
So, but Miro Little did step up a little bit. There were some good plays he made, I would say, and there was one.
Miro Little was the guy who made his free throws.
Yeah.
And Miro Little is the guy that if you can get him, right, he's not as he goes, so go the Utes. That's going to be Ezra Asar. That's going to be Keanu Dawes. That's going to be Jake, who has not been consistent as of late. But if you can get strong performances from Miro Little, your outlook changes so drastically.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing with Shar Johns too. You know?
He had 0 points in this game. He only played 13 minutes. So we'll check in on him and his health. But the Shark, Mike Sheriff-Jumps, he's been relatively consistent this year. I'm not going to pile on him right now, but golly. I'm the worst basketball player in the world. I've gone less than 10 minutes without a scoring drought in like a church ball game.
Yeah, or like a pickup game.
I'm the worst. You cannot have an entire squad going 10 minutes. If that happens, I'm telling, like, if you have a 5-minute scoring drought, you have to call a timeout, and you have to say, all right, here's what's going to happen. All right? I don't want any shot taken beyond the free throw line. I want crashing in, and you're either getting fouled and sent to the line, or you're getting a layup. Nobody shoot a three. Nobody shoot a mid-range jumper. Get your bleeping behind into the paint and take a high percentage shot. You cannot have that. It's disgusting college basketball when you see it, and Utah's not the only team guilty of it, but Utah is not a team that is talented enough, that is deep enough, that is playing well enough right now to survive long scoring droughts. So there has to be some recognition by coaches and by players to snap out of those by any means necessary. And by any means necessary. All right, end of my rant. We'll talk more about that when Andy Larson joins us. That's coming up at the top of our 1 o'clock hour. I want to get back into this NFL playoff discussion about special treatment for certain players. I don't know if that narrative is going to be too distracting from the greatness of a Super Bowl rematch from a couple seasons ago, but I want to see if we can kind of put it to bed a little bit. The Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Which fan base has it the worst? 49ers, Cowboys, or Bills? Niners, 30 years without a ring. They've come close several times. To me, that makes it more painful. I think the Super Bowl window is closing as you're about to give Brock bleeping Purdy a bunch of money. The Dallas Cowboys, 30 years for them, almost without a ring. And Jerry Jones is still your owner, which probably says enough. Buffalo Bills, no ring. Oh, so close. You feel like it's the year. You feel like you can believe, and then games like yesterday happen. And the referees won't give you a first down. Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 700. Now's your chance to see a Runnin' Utes home game. Text Utes to 33986 to win a pair of tickets. Utes to 33986. We just talked to some Utah ladies basketball, some Utah Runnin' Utes basketball. The NFL playoffs have shown us again that there's a certain amount of fatigue developing over the greatness of the Kansas City Chiefs. I want to root against them, and I just kind of can't because they seem like they're having so much fun. The team itself, I think, is pretty likable. Andy Reid is very likable. I have no problem with the Swiftie situation, with the Travis Kelce. I actually think it's been relatively subdued. And if you don't, you can always just like mute things, or you can flip it over. You can get that app and sync it to a radio broadcast or whatever. It's like that stuff doesn't bother me at all. What does bother me is that the Chiefs can't win anything without people saying, well, it's just because of the refs.
Yeah.
It's too reductive. I understand that there's some frustration, and it's pretty clear that the game is officiated differently for Patrick Mahomes than it is for, like, Lamar Jackson, or that it's officiated differently for Josh Allen and for Patrick Mahomes. That's great. Okay? Knowing that is fine. Attributing every success of the Kansas City Chiefs to that, or every failure for your team against the Kansas City Chiefs to that, is where it gets even more obnoxious than the consistency of the Kansas City success. We have to be better than this, and I understand it's risky to say it coming off a year when Utah football had some really, really rough wrong end of the referee's whistle scenarios in the Holy War game, most specifically. Every time you go into a game, or you go into a contest, or you come out of a game or contest with it was us versus the Zebras and the Kansas City Chiefs. It just is like, it's baby energy. It's like the weakest. Oh, well, the refs robbed us of this scenario. The first down, the Josh Allen sneak, bad spot, first down. That's something the league is going to have to address. That actually has nothing to do with them wanting to give Kansas City and wanting to give Patrick Mahomes preferential treatment. If anything, that's them not liking the Bills. But what that really is it's an imperfect process that needs to be improved, either with technology. I think technology is actually the only way you can improve it.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with the way it's been done, but if that's going to be a narrative in a game that decides who goes to the Super Bowl, then the multi-billion dollar industry that is the NFL needs to figure it out. I got to believe there's technology out there, Zach, that means your dog can't run away because its collar shocks it with some invisible fence.
Yeah.
We all have those things on our garage door where you can't get smashed by a garage door anymore because there's the little laser that goes across, and if you interrupt it, then the garage door goes back up. Like, I don't even know all the technology that is available, but I got to believe you could put some little, and because of the shape of a football, it would have to be, I think it would have to be at both ends of the ball. I think you would have to have whatever it is, like a little air tag at both ends of the football. Or maybe you have something that goes on the seam of the ball, like a transmitter of sorts that goes along the entire seam, the entire length of a football, right?
Yeah.
Put it on the inside, put it on the outside, put it on the laces. I don't care where you put it. But if that thing crosses this plane, then it triggers the signal that it's a first down. Whether or not anybody saw it, whether or not the cameras picked it up, the light turns green, and boom. That means that the ball crossed the line to gain.
Right.
The ball crossed the goal line. It can't be that difficult. Then what you would have to determine, it's not perfect. At that point, you would have to determine whether or not the ball, when it crossed the plane, was in the possession of the ball carrier, I suppose. And that, I suppose, brings in more difficulty, and you got to make sure that the camera angles are there. But if we're going to send a team to the Super Bowl or not based on a 54-year-old man like shuffling in from the sideline with his hand in the air and guesstimating. And by the way, NFL guys usually get it right.
Yeah, they usually do.
They usually do. But then if the replay is going to push it back, I don't know.
Yeah. Like,
technology has solved a lot of problems for us in the world. Technology can solve this problem. I swear it can. We have miracle technologies out there. Like, you don't have to wear glasses anymore. They can open up your eye, laser the back of your retina, and close that eye up. LASIK surgery takes like 5 minutes. You're telling me that we can't figure out how to get a transmitter on either side of an NFL football field that either allows the ball to pass and it passed, green light, indicator, cross the plane or not? Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't have to be the same system you use in soccer or in tennis. I totally understand the reasoning why people are like, that won't work in football. You're right. That exact thing will not work in football because those things rely on sight lines and rely on visualization and the ability of cameras to get the right angle on the ball and where the ball hits the line or misses the line or whatever. So don't use the exact same system. You're a multi-billion-dollar industry. Do something else. You know, when I was in Dubai, I was in the tallest building in the world. The Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the history of mankind. It is the Tower of Babel. This thing is enormous. It is huge. It's way taller than everything we've got here in the United States, right? How much do you think it costs to build that?
Billions and billions of dollars.
It cost $1.5 billion to build it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, but the NFL could build several of those every year and still be profitable. And you're telling me that we can't get some kind of transmitter in a football that would make it so this debate doesn't have to happen after an AFC championship game? Come on, NFL.
Yeah, it's like there's a camera inside the first down stick too that we can barely see anything in it.
If there's a camera in it, right? If you could put the technology for a camera in it, you could do some sort of laser, some invisible thing that if the transmitter or if the ball, the signal in the ball, the air tag in the ball, the whatever in the ball crosses that laser, first down.
Yeah.
Crosses that goal line, first down. The camera, I like it because it lets my eye help make a judgment.
Right.
But if my eye is going to be wrong, or if the eyes of the officials are going to be wrong, or even questionable, what's a better way to do it? You just say, haha, did it cross the plane? Did it make it past this point? We've got VR. We've got AI. We've got infrared, UV. We got everything.
Yeah.
There's a trillion different ways. Laser technology. Just boop.
Yeah, I was about to mention like the VAR stuff for like La Liga and Premier League, but
it's like that system has improved because that, by the way, that was even more ridiculous when European soccer was relying on visual stimulation in referees to decide if a ball had gone in or not. Mm-hmm. That was the craziest thing in the world.
Yeah,
that is an even more lucrative proposition over there. That is even more money where you were relying on just like human error or not human error to judge whether or not a goal went in. You don't have to do that anymore. We have the technology. We've been to the moon.
Yep.
I believe that, by the way. Don't hit me with your conspiracies. All right. Enough of my ranting. People don't want to hear that anymore. Andy Larson's going to join us, talk a little Utah Jazz basketball. They're back in action tonight at the Delta Center. Andy B. Larson next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome to hour number 3 of the Sean O'Connell Show. Time to talk a little hoop. We lean on Andy Larson, Utah Jazz and NBA insider over at the Salt Lake Tribune. Andy B. Larson on Twitter, on X. I still read it as Andy Blarson, and I always will. Andy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. You're not the only one. I get called Blarson more than I ever thought I would when I just threw my middle initial in the handle like that.
I don't know why, but I love it. It's like, it's the lowest hanging fruit possible, but it just makes me chuckle each time. Because I know you're Andy B. Larson, but I'd rather say Andy Blarson.
Blarson's a funnier nickname. Like, it just is. So I 100% endorse your nickname.
All right. I appreciate that. Let's talk a little Utah Jazz in action tonight against the Bucks. They're up. I'm calling it up. It might be down, but whatever. They're second best lottery odds right now. In the race to the bottom, they're currently the runners up. They have lost 5 games in a row. In this 5-game losing streak, which, again, improves your chances for a high lottery pick, are they also finding ways to develop the young talent, to create the infrastructure for success when you do get a high lottery pick?
I mean, a little. Look, like them losing the last 5 games is about them taking the tanking to the next level, right? Like, they sat 23-year-old Walker Kessler for rest, right? They're sitting Colin Sexton for rest. They are making up injuries for Lauri Markkanen and John Collins and some of these other guys on the roster in order to play as bad of a team as possible, which also, happens to be the young guys right now. And so I think they are getting more playing time than before. And you can see little flashes that are relatively encouraging, so like Isaiah Collier, for example, was moved into the starting lineup as a point guard. Keontae George was benched. And Isaiah, I think, has shown something with his passing and creativity a little bit where, looks to have kind of the point guard vision that the Jazz don't really have anywhere else on the roster. You've seen, I think, some nice moments from like Bryce Sensabaugh. I think you've seen Walker Kessler, when the Jazz choose to play him, play pretty well. But look, by and large, this is not, it is a little bit about developing the youth, and certainly that's kind of the side goal. But the number one goal here is to be as bad as possible to get as good of a pick and try to get Cooper Flagg come June.
So the trade deadline has the Jazz, I think, ready to make some moves. Who is most likely to be off this roster before the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think right now, given the interest around the league, you have to say probably John Collins. It looks like because he is a stretch 4 who can kind of fit in a few different teams, especially the ones that kind of see themselves as needing to get that extra bump to help them in the playoffs or just push them into the playoffs in some cases, like the Sacramento Kings. He adds the level of shooting, the level of rebounding, and he had a very good season until the Jazz kind of put him on ice a few weeks ago. I think, there's Colin Sexton is also obviously available, and I think that could make some sense for some teams. It's just a little bit harder to imagine him as like a real playoff difference maker just because of his size, but his numbers are good too, and I think there are teams that are going to be able to talk themselves into his scoring. As always, like the problem in making these trades happen is that you have to have equal salaries coming back, and so, what are the deals that make sense for other teams to kind of give that up? I think the Sacramento Kings have kind of like an obvious salary fit with Kevin Huerter as a guy who you can do Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles, for example, for John Collins. And I think that that trade basically makes some sense for both teams if the Kings are willing to throw a pick in there, which it sounds like probably they would. I think the Lakers would be interested in acquiring a Walker Kessler, but I don't know that the Jazz would be really interested in trading him unless they just get bowled over by an offer. I kind of imagine it as their 2 picks unprotected plus Dalton Connect. And who knows if they're willing to offer that. I understand why they would be reluctant to do that. So ultimately, I think it's the kind of older veterans, John Collins, Colin Sexton, and then maybe Jordan Clarkson, but he just hasn't had a very good last season and a half. And so it's maybe harder to sell him given that, the production on the floor hasn't been as high.
You mentioned Walker Kessler, who's like he's been awesome to watch his development. So how much does that development change? How fluid is kind of this plan as it evolves for the Utah Jazz? Because I think it's clear that Lauri Markkanen is a piece that they've decided will be part of their short-term future and potentially the long-term future as well. And Walker Kessler is playing well enough to, as you said, to generate some interest, but has he played himself into like no, we absolutely have to keep this guy on the roster because he is that bright of a spot for me. How fluid is a player like his status in the rebuild?
I don't think it's that fluid. I think it's one of those things where you'd really like to keep Walker Kessler as part of the rebuild unless you just do get bowled over by an offer that changes everything, right? And, I think you can make the case that 2 unprotected picks might be that. I don't know that Walker Kessler will ever be worth kind of 2 unprotected picks in his career, even if you put him on a really nice trajectory and when in 27 he's the 10th best starting center in the league. I think that's promising, but it also is probably worth 2 first-round unprotected picks in kind of the NBA's trade market, right? So if you are able to get that now, I understand that. But mostly what I expect is that the Jazz keep Walker Kessler and then extend him to some degree come next season when he's eligible for that extension. And you kind of poke around and kick around some numbers with people around the league, and it's probably in the $20 to $25 million range per season for a starting caliber center and of the caliber of a Walker Kessler. And I think that deal kind of makes sense for both teams where, or both sides where the Jazz lock up, again, a really young, a really productive big man who, protects the rim and rebounds the ball extremely well. And then, for Kessler, it's security in the range of $100 million. And, that's obviously a big deal. So I think that's the most likely thing to happen coming out of the, Kessler's future and with the Jazz.
Andy Larson, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking a little Utah Jazz. We'll get to some larger scale NBA stuff here in just a second. So of the young players, if we want to call them a young core, whose development has impressed you the most? I think we've covered Walker Kessler pretty thoroughly, so maybe not him, but who else do you look at and see what they've done in a Jazz uniform and say, yeah, that guy's going to be part of the Jazz future?
I wish I could say confidently any of the 6 guys they had drafted in the last 2 years, but I can't really, and that's tough. I mean, I again, we've seen flashes from Isaiah Collier, where, I think he has the passing vision and I think cares on defense more than some of the other young guys, but he can't shoot 18% from 3 and be an NBA player. You can't just be an NBA point guard when you're shooting that poorly. And if the shot never comes around, then he's not going to be an NBA player in 5 years, Cody Williams has been probably the worst player in the NBA this season, and that's been a real big disappointment. Kyle Filipowski, after a first good few weeks of the season, has been nearly invisible at times this year. And so, can he find consistency, I think is a real question. Bryce Sensabaugh is can score a lot on some nights, but still the defense leaves a little bit to be desired. And ultimately, he's a kind of scoring wing off the bench, probably kind of best case scenario. These are not by and large, kind of promising players. They're young and 19 and 20 and 21 years old. So there could be real development there. Obviously, Taylor Hendricks looked really good in the first 3 games before he broke his leg, and you don't know how he's going to come back. So I would say I don't know which of these players, I still don't know, even more than halfway through the season, which of these players will be part of the long-term core, other than kind of what we said earlier, Walker Kessler. Everyone else has significant room to grow there. And otherwise, they could find themselves out of the league. They do need to improve in order to make sure that they are NBA players again 5 years from now.
I ask a lot of my NBA guests this. I don't think I've asked you yet. If I have, forgive me. But is there a franchise right now, maybe particularly in the West, that has established the model that the Utah Jazz could follow to success?
Yeah, Oklahoma City, right? Oklahoma City was absolutely terrible 3 years in a row. But they, kind of developed around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who developed a lot himself, going from, the 50th best player in the league to the second best player in the league, probably, right? And then you get all these other players around him, from a Chet Holmgren to Jalen Williams, and kind of develop a defensive culture around them, and all of a sudden they're the best team in the NBA. They have, the best record in the league right now. So yeah, it's clearly OKC. I think you can look at like the San Antonio Spurs and be like, okay, this, they're around 500, fighting for playoff positioning in Wemby's second year. They've got some kind of nice young talent to go around, and Stephon Castle looks like a good player right now. But like, they're still earlier on in that stage of development than OKC is, where OKC is clearly like, again, either the best. They have the best record in the league. They're one of the best teams in the league right now, and they did it, entirely through rebuilding in the way that the Jazz are doing now.
Do you have to find an alien in order to keep up with the San Antonio Spurs?
Maybe. I mean, I think, I don't know that I would say Oklahoma City, like, maybe Chet Holmgren's an alien, but he's like kind of a weird, it's a different kind of player, I guess. But really, that's because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is so good, and he's not, I don't think, like an alien in any other respect other than he's like otherworldly talented, and his ability to make shots and draw fouls, and he's just kind of a slippery scorer rather more than anything else. Look, you just need a lot of really good players, and the Jazz are extremely far away in that they have, again, like one, maybe two guys to build around right now. That's not to say that couldn't change in the course of a couple of years here, but that it's going to take a Cooper Flagg or a Dylan Harper in this draft. It's going to take probably next year's draft, and hopefully you get an AJ DeBounce or a Darren Peterson or something like that. Like, you have to, a Cam Boozer, you have to go out and find extra other stars, other role players, and really maybe develop one of these six rookies and sophomores into being a really useful player. And then, all of a sudden you actually are something. But like, the Spurs and Wemby's going to be a top 5 player. I mean, he's already a top 10 player. He's going to be a top 5 player. He might be the best player in the league next year. Like, he's ridiculous. And it is something that you're just going to have to compete against in the Western Conference for the next decade. That there's no doubt about it.
I love watching him. It's the weirdest, like visually, it's the strangest thing to see, but it's awesome. It's like watching Avatar play sports. I enjoy it.
It's so cool. And like, the funny thing is, like, he gets winded still. Like, you can see all the times when like he could make a difference if he, had better conditioning or just knew the game slightly better or whatever. Like, there's still so much there left, but when he takes over games, it is wild, dude. It's so much fun to watch.
I remember watching a young Kevin Durant and thinking he's going to have to gain like 45 pounds in order for this to last in the NBA. And he never did. I mean, he gained some, but he's been the Slim Reaper his entire career. Is that the case with Wemby, or does he actually need to put on weight?
I mean, again, a little bit, but I think he's always going to be skinny. I mean, the NBA is not about like banging low post dudes anymore, right? Like, it is about the movement and about the speed and about the shot. And I think Wembanyama has that. So, I mean, a little bit stronger. And again, I think more than strength, it's the conditioning aspect for me, where he just needs to be quicker down the court, quicker, in his movements, and more consistent. Right now, kind of they play him in these 5 or 6 minute spurts, and I'd like to see him play 18 minutes in a row. Like, I think there's real growth there to be made, but like, from a weight gain point of view, I don't know that it's going to be 40 pounds. It's going to be, in my mind, kind of in the 20 range over the course of multiple years.
Well, if I'm the Utah Jazz, and thankfully I don't have to make decisions like this, I'm evaluating a lot of my decisions based on competing with the Spurs more than competing with, like, the Lakers, because that's an old team. With that in mind, besides Cooper Flagg, who of this class of, a relatively deep draft class, as we're told repeatedly, at least at the top, who is the guy that excites you the most?
I mean, clearly number 2 in this draft is Dylan Harper, who is a do-it-all big point guard, who can score, who can defend. He's really smart. He can pass. He's been one of the top 5 players in college basketball this year. He had a little bit of a slump where I think he was sick, and then has played better recently. But yeah, like Dylan Harper is awesome, and is going to clearly be the number 2 pick in this draft. And I think, given the Jazz's lack of point guard creation and kind of, frankly, just kind of awareness on and off the ball that I think Dylan Harper really shows and in the college level, they could use him a lot. I think that is I don't know that he profiles out to be like a all-NBA first-team guy, but I think he does profile out to be an all-star. And having an all-star point guard on this team would open up a lot for Lauri Markkanen. It opens up a lot for Walker Kessler. It opens up a lot for everybody else on the roster, obviously. Like, Dylan Harper's the guy, the next guy besides Cooper Flagg the Jazz fans should hope for in this draft.
Has Salt Lake City grown out of or graduated from the, the reputation worries that we had 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whether or not, even if you draft a guy like that, he's going to want to stay? I mean, his dad had some funny tweets and has walked some of those back. But this is a different place than it was even 10 years ago. Has Salt Lake City grown out of the you don't want to be a young, particularly black star in this town?
I think a little bit, but not very much. And I think ultimately the league is changing a little bit as well, where, frankly, a lot of the stars are international and maybe aren't chasing the nightlife as much as they maybe were 10 years or 15 years ago. Dylan Harper's obviously an American, and obviously you pointed out kind of his dad's tweets, so they're joking about not wanting to go to Utah. Yeah, that's still a thing. And, it's hard to compare to what it was 10 years ago when that was still obviously a thing. I mean, 20 years ago, they were able to sign Carlos Boozer and Memo Okur as free agents, and that kind of changed the franchise a little bit. But yeah, then like Gordon Hayward left and Donovan Mitchell wanted to leave and so on, right? Like it's still, I think, a real thing. Obviously, like way, way, way too soon to know what Dylan Harper would do 6 years from now in a Jazz uniform, right? Like who knows? And, ultimately I think what we've seen in the NBA that is like the basketball situation matters most of all, where like if you are winning and if you're in a good situation on the court, then likely you get to keep your free agents. And if not, then yeah, they're going to go elsewhere. There's just less unrestricted free agency right now in the NBA than kind of ever before because teams are locking up guys to extensions and so on. And I think that bodes well for the Jazz in terms of that, because again, you're right. Like, I don't think it's changed that much in terms of getting guys to come to Utah as free agents.
Because you mentioned his name, I'm curious whether you're a believer in Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Is that a team that can win the Eastern Conference, can win an NBA championship?
I think yes. I don't think they should be favored to do. Like, I would still take the Boston Celtics. And, actually both teams have struggled recently. The Cavs have lost 3 in a row. The Celtics have gone on this kind of like January boredom trip where they're, around 500 in the month. Like, that being said, I think the Celtics, because of their size and because of that they're kind of 6 really, really good players deep, that I still think that they're probably the favorites to win the NBA title and repeat. But they're also flawed enough, and especially with the way they play late in games, that you can imagine a younger team like the Cavs or like the OKC Thunder surprising them. And I think I've been encouraged this year with what I've seen from the Cavs. I mean, they're incredible defensively. Donovan is frankly taking a little bit of a back seat, and Darius Garland has been as important to that team as Donovan has been, which I think is good to see for like chemistry reasons, for what you might be able to see in the playoffs, where it doesn't just have to be the Donovan Mitchell show. It can be both players, or it can be a variety of guys scoring. I think that they're I would put them maybe 3rd or 4th most likely to win the NBA title this year, behind probably the Thunder and the Celtics. But that's still really good, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for taking their game to the next level after hiring a new coach in Kenny Atkinson and again, playing really well.
All right, before I let you go, I started the conversation because of the Kansas City Chiefs on the show today, and because of the narrative that a lot of NFL fans have embraced, that you got to beat the refs and you got to beat Kansas City if you're playing against that team. And this, I think, is more prevalent, or at least was more prevalent in the NBA, where games are pretty clearly officiated differently for certain players than for other players. Where do we stand with that right now in today's NBA?
Yeah, it definitely is a thing. I mean, and I think it's a little bit of a cycle where like guys figure out a thing and then the NBA rules change a little bit to, so like the James Harden drawing fouls on 3-point shots thing, they legislated that out a little bit. So now he's not drawing quite as many fouls. And now Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is leading the league in free throws. And he does it through kind of these drives and driving herky-jerky and trying to get guys up in the air and so on. But yeah, like I do think like the game is is refereed a little bit differently for the stars. I still think that's a thing. I will say I don't think as much it's different at a team level than it was before. So like everyone remembers the 2000 Western Conference Finals between the Kings and the Lakers, where the Lakers were getting kind of every call, right? Where the Kings, and as a result, lost that Game 6, or was it a Game 7, lost the series. And it was, clearly the refs played a role there kind of on a team-wide point of view. Maybe that was Kobe and Shaq and kind of the star power there, but I think it was kind of Lakers versus Kings as much of anything and kind of the big market versus small market. I don't feel that part of it as much anymore. But I do still think, the top 5 guys in the NBA are officiated a little bit differently significantly differently than your rookies and sophomores and guys trying to, make a name for themselves.
Are you okay with that? I totally understand why it works that way. It doesn't bother me that much, I guess, because these leagues have to, protect that branding or whatever. Where do you stand on it?
I mean, I don't like it. I would prefer everybody gets officiated the same. Like, I also recognize that, like, this is kind of a human thing. And when referee X sees, again, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander driving down the lane, knowing that he's an MVP candidate, he's just going to react. His brain is going to react differently to what he sees than when Isaiah Collier is running down the lane and it's a guy he's never heard of before, right? So, if we had referee robots who could like really actually do this in a real way, then my preference would be let's call it as evenly as possible, right? But I also, understand why it happens and don't want to kill them too much for that. There are lots of things about NBA refereeing I would change. It doesn't feel like that is the biggest problem right now.
Andy, your insight is very much appreciated. I could keep you all day, but I'll let you go. Thank you for your time, sir.
Hey, man. Thanks, Steve. Have a good one.
Andy B. Larson. Andy Blarson, Jazz and NBA insider over at the Salt Lake Tribune. He also does write a data column once a week for the Trib. He's just great at the job, so appreciate him lending his NBA insights here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Plenty left to get to. Don't go anywhere. I want to remind you that ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM have the cash kickoff going on right now. If you want a shot to win $1,000 cash to help pay your bills, text BUCKS, BUCKS, to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win. That's BUCKS to 508-777-1000. This is a nationwide contest. Lots more to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. Hey, you will not believe what Coach Lynn Roberts just pulled off this last weekend. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. So we haven't really updated you on what's going on with Lynn Roberts, former Utah women's head basketball coach. She's with the LA Sparks now. Just pulled off a big trade, grabbed Kelsey Plum. She obviously coached against Kelsey Plum when she was at Utah. Plum went to Washington when Utah was still a Pac-12 school. And Plum is a perennial WNBA All-Star who Lynn Roberts now gets to coach. So nifty little move there in the WNBA for the LA Sparks, grabbing veteran talent for Lynn Roberts and her disposal. I'm not going to spend a whole segment trying to tell you what that means for the WNBA. All right, I know my limitations. Just thought I'd mention it. Super Bowl championship is the matchup is set. Eagles versus Chiefs. How pumped are we that the Chiefs could do something that has never been done in NFL history? I know that there's some fatigue on the Chiefs, but there's more people here, I think, that have some affection for the Chiefs for whatever the reason than there are people who are true, like, Chiefs haters. Now, I don't love the Chiefs because they have been the thing that stood in the way of my beloved San Francisco 49ers winning a couple of Super Bowls. But as much as I would like to hate them, as much as I would like to be more fatigued by their success, it's hard not to admire the way that they're doing this. It's hard not to admire Andy Reid as a coach, and I'm not a Patrick Mahomes fan like a lot of people are Patrick Mahomes fans, but you just have to kind of like shake your head in awe sometimes about the things he's able to do. Do I think he gets a little bit of preferential treatment from referees? Maybe, certainly. Do I think that is the reason why they win football games? I do not think that's the reason why they win football games. And that's probably the difference between me and a lot of people out there. The reason that this result, I think, was such a heartbreaker for me is that, Utah had an opportunity to get a couple of recent greats into the Super Bowl with that Buffalo Bills team. Cole Bishop had a good game yesterday. He wasn't expecting 2 weeks ago to start in the AFC Championship, but that next man up mentality has permeated his career when he was at the University of Utah and even before, and is certainly something that he's going to embrace at the NFL level. He led the team in tackles. He, I think, should have been credited an interception in that game. He was run over a couple of times also in the game. Like, it was probably what you expect for a young player being given the stage, the opportunity on that level.
Yeah, I agree. And
he played well, though. And Cole Bishop has a lot to smile about, and so do the Bills in knowing that guy's going to be part of their roster moving forward. Dalton Kincaid, second-year player Dalton Kincaid, the young tight end, had an opportunity to make what would have been the play of the Bills season. As Josh Allen evades some pressure. He was terrible under pressure yesterday, by the way. I think he was 1 for 8 when pressured for a total of 4 yards. Is the stat that I saw. That sucks. Like, I got no animosity towards Josh Allen. He's a lot better of an NFL player than I thought he was going to be. I watched him at Wyoming a few times. They were still in the conference with Utah State, and we were paying a lot more attention to Utah State. And I was like, how is this guy regarded as a top draft pick? I was wrong about Josh Allen. All right, like he deserved to be a top draft pick. He deserved to be given, that sort of franchise, face of a franchise type status with the Buffalo Bills. But you can't go up against Patrick Mahomes and struggle against more importantly, you can't go up against Steve Spagnuolo, and go play poorly against pressure.
I agree.
Everyone in the league knows that guy, it was actually hilarious to be sitting in an airport watching it on airport TVs. And also I had my phone out following the narrative on social media, and everybody, we'll have Jeff Schwartz on the show tomorrow. We'll talk about this with him. Everybody before that 3rd and 4th down scenario, everybody and their dog that follows NFL football was predicting the pressure was coming. Now, how it was going to come, whether it was going to be a zero blitz, whether it was going to be some backside simulated pressure, whatever it was going to be, that was up for a question. everybody knew that Spags was going to heat up Josh Allen. You got to know. As the player, you got to know. As the offensive coordinator, the play caller, you got to know. McDermott, you all got to know. Everyone's got to know that it's going to get ugly right here, right? And he evades the pressure. He finds a way to get the throw off. And Dalton Kincaid has to kind of pirouette and break back inside on the ball. He has to lay out to try and catch it. And as I talked about at the beginning of the show, 9 times out of 10, he makes that catch. He will have an opportunity to make that catch as his career progresses, and he's going to make that catch. He didn't get his hands on the ball, it hit his arms, and it hits the turf. It was not the same level. It was not an egregious drop like the Mark Andrews one. It was not like you're wide open. All you got to do is catch the ball with your hands and then sit down into the end zone on a 2-point conversion. It was not that. But it was a ball that we've seen. It was a play that we've seen Dalton Kincaid make, which is why it was so hard for, I think, Utah fans who have affection for that guy to watch. We've seen him make more impressive catches than that. The eastern sideline, north end zone, that catch against USC where he laid out, jumping, going backwards, fingertips on the ball in that USC game, one of his 18 catches of the day. That guy, like, he can catch anything. So we've seen him make more impressive plays than that. Really, really tough to watch it not happen on the biggest stage. The important takeaway for me after seeing that was how immediately his teammates kind of rushed to his side, literally and figuratively. Everyone showed their support for Dalton Kincaid, just like the Ravens showed their support for Mark Andrews. That's what a team sport is, right? Morgan Scalley was tweeting about it. Like, everybody knows what that guy is, and he's going to have opportunities in his career for redemption. But the Bills are in a bad way. That Bills Mafia, when you think it can actually happen and then it doesn't, you fall short of your expectations. That, to me, feels more painful. That feels worse. That is more sickening than I'm a Niners fan. I began this year thinking they were going to be in the Super Bowl. About halfway through the season, it became clear that with the injury bug and with whatever chemistry issues were happening, it just wasn't going to be the case this year. And I just let it go. I just enjoyed the rest of the football season, even though Utah wasn't giving me anything to enjoy. I was just like, you know what? Like, it's just a sport. For a Bills fan, you can't have that. You couldn't do that. This year, you were like, this team's going to the Super Bowl. This is our year. We got everything we need. We're going to let James Cook touch the ball more than 13 times in the run game, and look what's going to happen. And unfortunately, once again, they fall short of the expectations that weren't always realistic, but now are realistic. So Bills fans, I think, are probably pretty miserable today. And that's the lot in life of a Bills fan. I put a poll question out there, who's got it worse? I put Niners, Cowboys, or Bills fans. Cowboys barely edging out the Bills. 47.7% of the vote going to Cowboys fans. 45.9% to Bills fans. Only 6% given to the 49ers, because even though it's been 30 years with no ring and you've gotten close, I guess it's a recency bias thing. This year the Niners just were miserable.
Yeah.
Do Cowboys fans have it worse than Bills fans, Zach?
Honestly, that's a great question. We can ask Porter when he comes on. But
that's a good question to ask Porter.
Yeah.
I always forget what a bad decision he makes.
Did you put an other option on that too, or no?
No, I didn't, because the most miserable fan base in all of NFL fandom is the Jets. But the Jets are not they don't belong in the same category as these teams, because and the Browns are probably even worse, right? But these are teams that everybody thought this year was gonna have a chance to win a championship.
Yeah, everybody thought the same thing with Detroit too. They got one and done.
That would have been a good option.
That's what I
should have run the poll question by you. Detroit would have been another option. Who has it worse? Detroit fans, Cowboys fans, or Bills fans? Honestly, the Niners are the outlier here. I should have taken Niners fans off and put Detroit Lions fans on there, because they're more heartbroken. That was a team that thought they were poised at least to make a run at the Super Bowl, and what you thought was going to happen was that Patrick Mahomes was going to be your hurdle. Instead, Jaden Bleepin Daniels was the thing that you couldn't get over. And now, look, by the way, which fan base has it worst? Well, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you act like you have it the worst. Philadelphia fans are the most insufferable fans to be around. Even at an airport, yes, was not at the Philadelphia airport, thank goodness. At the Houston airport, there were Philadelphia fans yelling in the terminal, yelling. Your team is winning. They scored 55 points, and these folks are yelling in public. Philly fans, man, do better.
Yeah, I could go on
Change
a
your
whole
life.
tangent about that.
Philly fans are not easy to get along with.
No.
All right, we're going to take a break. Little crosstalk with Spence Checketts coming up. ESPN 7 and 92.1 FM welcoming Billy Idol to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater September 5th. We'll have tickets to give away, and you can find details at ESPN700sports.com. Topical trivia with Billy Idol tickets to give away next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. 530-700 on the Dish Pros text line. 2 tickets to Billy Idol at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. If you can answer this question correctly, the Buffalo Bills have been to how many AFC Championship games? How many times have they played in the AFC Championship? We know that they've never won a Super Bowl. How many times have the Buffalo Bills gotten this close, right on the doorstep, like they were yesterday against the Kansas City Chiefs, only to be turned away from the ultimate prize of a Super Bowl ring? How many appearances have the Buffalo Bills made in an AFC Championship game? 877-353-0700 for 2 tickets to Billy Idol at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. Hopefully, everyone is sending door-dashing delicious foods and drown your sorrows type stuff to Dalton Kincaid today. And not just to Dalton Kincaid. He had 2 catches in the game. Cole Bishop, 10 tackles in the game at a interception that should have been called an interception. It was not called an interception. James Cook, send that guy some, I don't know, what do you think James Cook likes? James Cook, send him some pancakes. Send him an order of garlic fries or something. He was absolutely monstrous in yesterday's game. I mean, so incredibly productive, and unfortunately and ultimately, they did not give him the ball enough. I understand the sentiment of you want to allow Josh Allen to try and win you that game. Then have Josh Allen throw the ball to James Cook. He was just outrageous. Ended up getting 16 touches in the game, which is probably an adequate number in some of their regular season contests. But when a guy is giving you chunk plays, 16 yards a catch, 6 yards plus per carry, I mean, in a game that is far from decided, keep feeding the productive players on your roster. Yeah. Don't try and force anything else.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. It's like I looked up his carries and stuff from the last 2 games. 43 total carries and catches, or touches. I should say touches. And then you have 16 this game. Like, that's not you're getting your guys productive if you're giving him 16 touches total versus you've had 43 touches total in the last 2 games.
Just stay with what's gotten you here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, 13 carries, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns for James Cook. Josh Allen, conversely, carried the ball 11 times for 39 yards. Some of those not designed runs, but a lot of those were designed runs. And nobody in the receiving game was really getting going. Matt Collins had an unbelievable touchdown catch, but he had 3 catches, 73 yards on the day. James Cook was your second leading receiver. 3 catches, 49 yards. That's where that 16 yards per catch comes in that I already told you about. A really, really rough one for the Buffalo Bills. And you'll notice I spent a lot of time talking about that game instead of the NFC Championship game. The Washington Commanders are so far ahead of schedule. They were playing with house money here. So I don't have the same sympathy, even though it would have been great to see Bobby Wagner play in another Super Bowl and the local connections there. And how fun would that be for Jaden Daniels to be the first rookie to lead his team to a Super Bowl appearance? Would have been great. But you don't have the same feeling of the Commanders have really put in the work and they've laid this groundwork, and it's time for them to really take that next step and take their place among the NFL greats. They're just ahead of schedule. They will be there in that conversation probably for years to come. If the front office does things the right way with that quarterback on a rookie deal, you're going to be just fine in Washington. Philadelphia, Kansas City is your Super Bowl matchup. We'll be talking about it at least some for the next couple of weeks here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Spence Checketts and The Drive are coming up next, and Spence Checketts joins me now in our Broadway studios. Hello, Spence.
Welcome home, young man.
Thank you.
How are your travels?
They were great. Long flights, but can't complain.
Caught a little bit of the broadcast. Well done.
Thank you.
Didn't sound tired at all.
Was not.
Pro's pro. Okay. Yeah, you were probably a little tired. I mean, if we're fair, you didn't sound like it, is just what I'm saying.
I was fine. It was great. Yeah, the fights were awesome. If you didn't get a chance to see them live, go find them on Max. the main event was a spectacular 5-round championship fight.
So I was thinking about this when I was, and I've thought about this before, listening to you, watching you break down the fights. And you've done a little football play-by-play color on some broadcasts too. Do you prepare for a fight the same way you would prepare for a football game? Is it similar? Like, you got to scout tendencies, you got to scout whatever it is. Do you have like a spotting board in front of you when you're calling PFL fights?
Well, no need for a spotting board because it's just the two guys, right?
Right.
I
have something like it?
I have written notes in front of me, based on the difference, I think, in preparation for one or the other. You certainly watch film. You try to pick up those tendencies. That's something football broadcasters do all the time. We just straight up ask fighters, like, how's this going to go? What's going to happen? We have fighter meetings, and then, sometimes you get some stuff from fighters. Sometimes they're real standoffish and real worried, nervous about putting too much of the game plan out there, even though not a single broadcaster that I know would ever reveal any of that stuff to an opponent.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Like no one would do it.
Oh, by the way, watch his left hook.
Yeah.
No
one would do that because we want the fight to be what the fight is supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Fair competition. But yeah, I think there's probably way more similarities than differences in preparing for broadcasting.
So you were once upon a time a fan of the 90s Knicks, and you combine that with what we went through here with the 90s Jazz. Is the Mahomes is Jordan comparison, like, is Josh Allen Karl Malone? Is he Patrick Ewing? Like, is that kind of what we're dealing with here?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, knowing that these guys are out there, if you're Josh Allen, you're like, okay, I'm Karl Malone, so I'm able to get past Barkley and Olajuwon, but I can't get past Michael Jordan. Like,
right.
Josh Allen can get past Lamar Jackson. He can beat that guy. He just can't beat Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Yeah, the only, so I was doing some of this morning, like, okay, exactly who is Josh Allen in this analogy here? The only thing that doesn't work about the Karl analogy is the Jazz were the best team in pro basketball in 1998. But there was also a feel, because I was a PR intern down there, 97 and 98, when I was at the U, and there was a feel that 98 was the chance. 98 was, okay, John and Karl drafted 84, 85. This is 14, 15 years in the making. We finally had the cash around them. Ostertag had a pulse, right? Hornacek was acquired as that third piece. Okay, all of the work has led to, and look, in 96, 97, they were very good, but they weren't better than the Bulls. In 97, 98, they were better than Chicago. And so the feel was, all right, this is our best shot, but if we don't get it done now, we never will. It was their best and final shot because John and Karl were in their mid-late 30s. John got hurt the next year. Karl ends up in Los Angeles. So, like, Josh has plenty of shots left in him. But at this point, it does feel like there's some sort of Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Lionel Messi, as you know, is a soccer guy, analogy here as far as what Mahomes and, quite frankly, Andy Reid, what they are right now.
Yeah, they are the boogeyman that you lose sleep over at night. And you bring up that equivalency in other leagues, and the NBA is a good one, I think, especially those 90s teams that we both have such great affection for. But there's also this other obstacle in the NFL with the quarterback numbers and the hard cap and the salaries that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and those guys are demanding right now. Patrick Mahomes is the 11th highest paid quarterback in the league. And that's part of the reason why he's able to win championships.
For sure, yeah.
And, like, the 49ers are going to throw $52 million a year at Brock Purdy, and I'm going to throw up thinking about it because that means you've got limited time with Trent Williams, which you already do because he's aging. You got limited time with Christian McCaffrey, with George Kittle, with Debo, with Ayuk, with Warner, with all the guys that make your team great, right? And that's going to be the case. That's why the Commanders are so interesting now, because they've got Jaden Daniels for, $5 million a year for the next 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, I was polling so badly for anything other than Chiefs-Eagles. I wanted either the Bills to beat the Chiefs or the Commanders to beat the Eagles. And in all reality, I talked about this on Friday, I picked the Bills, but I said I completely anticipate sitting there on Sunday going, "You idiot! Like, what are you doing?" And I thought the Commanders would make it a fairer fight. But look, man, I've heard a lot of people say this today. Howie Roseman, that's got to be on paper. Philly, like top to bottom, potentially the most talented team in all pro football, because we all talk about the coaches and the quarterback, that relationship, that symbiotic relationship between those two, as the most important thing in pro football, and it seems like everybody hates Sirianni and thinks Jalen's completely overrated, yet here they are potentially, winning a Super Bowl. That roster's loaded, but I thought, and I agree with you, Bobby Wagner, oh, man, Dalton, that's a tough pass to catch no matter what, but he's going to want that back. I thought Cole played well early, then struggled a little bit late. I was watching him a lot, proud of him for his first start. But, yeah, the local angle would have been nice. But we still have the Fighting Britton Coveys. And, of course, Andy coached at Brigham Young. So
yeah, and Alex Whittingham is on his staff.
Yes, indeed. So there's still some local ties, people to cheer for.
So a Ute is going to get a Super Bowl ring.
Do you have a dog in this fight at all?
I hate saying this because the Chiefs have made me cry a couple of times in Super Bowls against the 49ers.
Yep.
But because I have no horse in the race here, I'm not a Philly fan. I want to see the Chiefs go 3 in a row and make history. If we're watching the lesser of two evils, at least make it a historic one for me.
I think I'm with you as well, because
Bill Belichick is given that best coach in NFL history.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Reid, if he goes 3 in a row, and the success he had without a Patrick Mahomes when he was in Philly, and then of course, what he did with even Alex Smith in Kansas City. I want that conversation. Andy Reid might be the best coach in NFL history.
He's the best closing coach that I've ever seen. In Spagnuolo, that corner blitz at the end. My gosh. They just, and I heard, I think it was the left tackle who was interviewed after the game. He said, Spagnuolo's the pitcher that sets you up for the curveball at the end that he hasn't thrown for 8.5 innings, because that blitz was the one thing they hadn't brought. And everybody's cracking on Josh, but what do you do there? I thought the fact that Josh was able to get it downfield and Dalton actually had a chance was an unbelievable throw. But, at least it was a really good game. You look at the box score. If you cover the final score, looked at the box score, it's like two completely evenly matched teams, but one has 15 under center and Andy Reid on the sideline.
And that's why they're headed to the Super Bowl. Again, we'll be talking about it for a while. Crosstalk today and every day is brought to you by our friends at Advanced Window Products. Sales, installation, warranty coverage, all of it is in-house. No middleman markups. $2,500 off 10 windows or more at advancedwindows.com. 801-850-9100. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday. Glad to be back with you. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.